Commissioners to order for Tuesday, June 16th, 2015. And our first item of business today is under County Administration. Item 1A is a public hearing and work session on the FY 15-16 approved budget and work session on the FY 15-16 budget adoption. And we have Christine Moody with our budget manager. And I'll turn it over to you for now.
Okay, so the first item that you mentioned is that we're required by law to have a public hearing on the approved budget before the Board of Commissioners makes any changes to it if they desire to do that. So hopefully we have a sign-up sheet for that part.
No one on the sign-up sheet is Great.
So I will open the public hearing on the budget. And we have no one signed up to speak. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the budget? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and we'll move on.
Okay.
Ms. Moody.
So as the commissioners know, because you're part of the budget committee, the budget was approved on May 21st after they also held a public hearing and a few work sessions. And there were a few changes to the proposed budget through the approved process, and you'll find those on attachment A of your packet in front of you if you're interested in reviewing those. Then we open up the budget to departments to let us know what may have changed in the budget since they began the budget process about 6 months earlier. And so they have submitted those changes, most of them related to grants that have changed, some revenue that's changed, if they had any changes in personnel that were major enough for them to put in. Then they've submitted those changes, and you have a list of those also, attachment B. So there's a few pages there. So usually at this meeting, the work session portion would be if the commissioners have any comments about those additions or reductions that are being proposed, or if you had anything else that you would like us to look into that would change the approved budget in any way.
Commissioner Lyken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it looks like, and so I'd like to ask, maybe it's a question about process. So we vote today, but it's looking more and more like there's becoming more of a, it's past a slim hope now. It's actually a little, now I'll call hope, that there's going to be a transportation package. And sounds like negotiations are going very well. And looks like there's going to be some give and take between both sides, and we may get one. Now, this will happen after we obviously adopt. So maybe on a process, if a transportation package is passed, and that would also account for potentially new money coming into Lane County as far as road funds are concerned, or our public works road funds in particular. Maybe a process on how would a supplemental budget? Would you come back with a supplemental budget on this? So I'm just kind of asking the question from a process standpoint. Right now, it's just hope.
Yes.
So, and we'll leave it at that. But it's a little bit more optimistic than it was, say, 2 weeks ago.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Lyken. So if there are changes to the adopted budget, then after July 1st, we can come back with a supplemental for anything that's unanticipated at the time you adopt. And we can do that pretty quickly, especially if it's one item, if they needed to get it in. Typically, your first supplemental comes to you after the general ledger closes, when we know what 14-15 ended like. But like I said, we can do another one. We've done them in the summer before as needed.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
So before I ask for more questions, I failed to mention at the beginning that Commissioner Stewart is excused today. He's at, I believe, a Forest Trust Council meeting today representing the counties overall. So we appreciate that he's off serving us in another capacity today, but he is excused. Any other questions for staff on the budget? Commissioner Sorensen.
With regard to the this topic that we talked about last time, at our last meeting, the gun registration and gun legislation that the Oregon legislature just passed. Apparently they had just passed the legislation, Senate Bill 941, a few weeks ago, and the governor signed it. I don't think there was any mention of it during the budget process. Apparently, it has a requirement that counties receive reports of private gun sales, but there apparently isn't any funding, state funding attached to it. So it's a mandate, but not funded. And I'm wondering if there is any consideration in this budget now that the legislation got passed, but the news of that is trickling into the budget world. What is your assessment of this budget and how it's going to affect or not affect that process?
Commissioner Sorensen, so as you mentioned, that news is just coming in, and so this material in front of you has been prepared over the last couple weeks. So there is nothing in here that I know of directly related to that. So we would have to do some analysis on what those costs would be, which department it would be borne in, and then see if there was a need for supplemental or if it was spread out enough.
Okay. One question that was asked to me by a constituent was whether or not there could be some efficiency in the issuance of concealed carry permits. Apparently, to get a concealed carry gun permit, you have to fill out an extensive form and get a background check done on you, and that there are some 20,000 of these issued per year by the Lane County Sheriff's Office. And I'm wondering why we have to have any duplication of what is the new requirement and what is the, and I realize that doesn't cover all gun sales because concealed carry permits are for people that already own guns that want to conceal and carry those guns. Yep, go ahead, Steve.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Sorensen, I can try to take a stab at that. It's my understanding that the process is different for receiving a concealed carry permit than it is for the new law under 941 that was passed by the legislature. The concealed carry law requires an individual to go into the sheriff's office and fill out a form, get a background check, and the permit is then issued from the sheriff's office. The process that is now required through the new state legislation under 941 requires two individuals who are transacting, making a transaction related to a private gun, so a private gun sale between two parties that are not related, are required to go into a private dealer and have that transaction processed and recorded through that private dealer, and then the private dealer conducts the background check and the registration and the documentation that's required through that state law now is handled through that private dealer. So two really, as I understand it, and I just had this conversation with the sheriff last week as we were talking about the implications of that state law and the cost and work involved in enforcing it at the local level, that those are really two different processes. So I'm not sure that there is necessarily overlap there, because you have an established process for concealed carry permits that's required through the sheriff's office, and a separate one that is required now for private gun sales between private individuals with the private dealers. And then the only other thing that, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, that I would add to this outside of the state legislation related to firearms is there are a number of areas of state legislation that are currently being contemplated. Commissioner Lycan mentioned the potential for a transportation package, which we hold out hope for, of course. There are other areas where we believe if the legislature and the governor does approve proposed legislation related to sick leave and minimum wage, for example, that those likely will bring additional costs to Lane County that we're calculating. They're not in place today, so we can't say that they will negatively impact our budget, but we are tracking that legislation as well as other state legislation where we rely on funds, Community Correction Act funding, 3194 funding for public safety, and other services. We're tracking all of those things to make sure that we understand where we'll be impacted either positively or negatively, and we'll come back to the board as needed to update you on those and to make adjustments.
So then you mentioned that you'd be doing some more briefing, or how would you describe that, Christina, what the next process is to understand with a last-minute decision in the state government that affects our requirements under Oregon law, what is it that we, or what I should say is, what is it that you would do? You said you were going to be doing some more to learn more about this.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Sorensen. So as we get final word that things have passed and we're able to do the analysis, then that's the point that we would make a change in the budget. So we have that opportunity to do supplemental budgets throughout the year as things change. And at any point, any given point, the budget is our best estimate at that moment. So that is what's in front of you right now with what we know or knew at the time this was prepared.
And that would occur in 2 weeks when we approve the budget?
You'll be adopting the budget next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so it would occur most likely after adoption.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions on the amendments to the approved budget or the approved budget in general? So I'm glad you covered some of the other impacts that are currently either close to being signed by the governor, or just some of them are just being proposed this morning that will impact our budget up in Salem and that process. And it's a process we deal with every year, because it seems like other than the short years, they'll close up early enough for us to adjust our budget. But on every long legislative year, we're always in this situation where it seems like they're not done, but we have to adopt before the end of June. So we end up in this guessing game. It's even worse, though, for the school districts. I mean, you can imagine what it's like to be a school district and they don't know what the final K-12 number is, and they're adopting budgets guessing. And when I was at LCC, it was even bigger guessing game, because it seemed like the community college number was one of the last things that ever got locked down at the legislature, and we had to take this wild guess. And then we'd end up having to adopt a supplemental budget, a month or two after the legislature closed. Of course, there was one year, I think Commissioner Farr remembers, where they were like into August before they got sine die.
Middle of August.
Yeah. So it was a real guessing game to adopt the budget by July 1 under Oregon law for a district or county of any size, knowing that the state funding for various programs was up in the air, and there was still the possibility of legislature to pass that would impact your budget. And I'm glad that Mr. Mokrahysky mentioned the Community Corrections Act and the House Bill 3194. Currently, as the county commissioner that sits on the Public Safety Coordinating Council, we're in our budget process too. Every little piece that under state law has to have a budget committee. So I sit on that budget committee. Judge Voigt is our chair, and we're taking a guess. And we're developing 3 scenarios: a high, low, and a medium scenario. But the current talks in Salem are they're going to take some money from what was House Bill 5008, that was justice system local jail beds. It was the state prison system supporting local jail beds, and it was a $5 million allocation the last biennium. And they're wrapping that into 3194 and making it look like they're funding 3194, but it's actually a cut to the counties, because that was actually $5 million that went to the counties. So they're playing shell games up there too. So it's really hard to figure out. And then are we able to recover those jail beds under 3194, which has restrictions about being programs that are designed to prevent prison bed use? And do those local jail beds qualify under that 3194 grant program? So it's a really complicated crystal ball that we have to look at. So we're going to be on the fly making adjustments, I think, over the next month or two. But I really hope that the legislature will fully fund those justice reinvestment programs, because they're critical to us funding parole officers. They're critical to us funding deputy district attorneys and other programs that are so important to the county. So if there are no further questions or comments, Commissioner Lykin?
One quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Steve, this may be a question for you or just a monitoring, and then we'll eventually get back to Christine, and that is, can we have either Alex or Sarah Chinsky potentially provide an update, because it's my understanding the governor is going to be signing a new public records law, and unfortunately I think what happens many times in the state legislature, most legislators have never held public or local office before, and so they have really a lack of understanding of the financial impacts and staff impacts the public records law have on local governments. So is this something we can monitor? Because I really don't know what's in this bill at all. And I mean, it's challenging enough when people ask for public records requests to go through data after data after data, especially when, that's why we ask people to narrow dates so we get a better idea. And so if we could just monitor that, because eventually that may come back to Christine from the financial side of what those impacts are. So I'm just going to ask that we monitor that, because, again, I have no idea what's in that bill. And so I'll be curious myself. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? And today is just a work session, so next week we'll actually be doing the formal adoption of the budget. I still find it surprising that we didn't have anyone sign up for the public hearing, knowing that this budget is basically, on a lot of our programs, a continuance of very low levels of service to our county, and in our roads department is a complete evisceration of our ability to maintain our roads. Still surprising that no one's here to address any of those programs or wanting us to move, money around between programs. There seems to be so little interest in our, county's budget, $500 million basically being spent. And this is the second public hearing. We've had absolutely no public sign up and very little attendance. And I think a lot of the people are here for other items that are in the audience today. So a little disappointing. So with that, we'll be seeing you next week for the formal adoption, and maybe you'll have some information about what the legislature's done up to that point, but we'll probably still be waiting to hear. So thank you, Ms. Moody.
Thank you.
So that brings us to item 2, adjustments to the agenda, and I want to note that item 11A, Public Works, is pulled from the agenda this week. The gentleman from the State Marine Board couldn't make today, but he'll be here next week, so that item will happen next week. And then there'll also be an executive session today, and we have to have that at a time certain of 1:30 today, because there's telephone participation in that, and we'll be holding that up in the Board of Commissioners conference room, and there will be need to come out in public session after that. So I'll be reading in the exec session at the beginning of that. When, we'll just recess for lunch, and we'll call back in the regular session upstairs. Any other changes to the agenda or adjustments? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. And I've got 2 people, I believe, signed up for public comment. And the first person is Josephine Coe. And if you'll come to the podium and state your name and the city you're from for the record, and then I'll start your 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. My name is Josephine Coe, and I believe we met before a couple weeks ago. And I'm here for the same issue that I spoke about, the Acorn Park Community for Wellbeing. We heard about HACSA. One of your staff employees had passed on from a car accident yesterday, and we're sorry to hear that. We are very grateful for what HACSA and sponsors are doing for the community, and we want them to continue. We just wanted to have a better, to use better judgment in the location of the oaks that's proposed on Acorn Park on 14th. just wanted to update you on what's going on. We started with Mayor Kitty Piercy and Chris Pryor, the council for Ward 8, and we were referred to the county and state, and so we did all that. We went to the Attorney General and also the Oregon State Housing Council, and they brought us back here, and so we kind of started from where we started. It's a big circle, that's what Chris Pryor said. So anyway, I'm also calling for the mission of HACSA is to provide opportunities for housing participants to, so they can nurture the self-reliance and economic independence by having housing, and we are grateful for that. So he said that the people would have the highest degree of professional courtesy, empathy, and respect. And my neighbors, they're indigent, some of them are, and some are homeowners. It's a combination. They just want to have the dignity of living in peace, and they feel that sponsors being there would be a threat to the safety of their children. And they would like to be here to speak, but they can't take time off from work. They're feeding young children, and so I'm here to speak on their behalf. And so another thing is that if we were to build sponsors building there would be an overpopulation already. And when it happens, there's going to be, the sewage might just fall apart. There's already 10 apartment complexes there. And so that breeds diseases. And you know, the Lane County Public Officer 2 weeks ago had really spoken about the outbreak of meningitis on U of O campus. And so we don't want another disaster to happen there. So if we can, please have them relocate to a more viable spot. There's a lot of spots there. Hynex, Walmart, Target, that area. It has more breathing room. We feel like we're being squeezed, and, you know, this is an at-risk group of individuals already living there. One of my next-door neighbor's daughter, not quite 16, already got pregnant, just found that out. And so we would like the HACSA and the Lane County Commissioners, the city, to reconsider all of these factors. We don't want something to happen to the children, and one resident said we don't want to have to sue the county, the city, the state, whoever, the council, housing council. So prevention is the best medicine, I hear. So we plead with you to reconsider all of these factors. And some of them already complain of disturbances at the St. Vincent de Paul housing on 18th and Oak Patch. It's like some brawls and drunkenness, and they're awake, the residents are there. And I'd like to report also that about 5 families already moved out, and 2 more are going to in the immediate vicinity. And so we don't want to defeat the purpose of HACSA's mission to gain 54 and then lose 200 families. So thank you for your time. And I do have the letter from the Attorney General here that I'd like to give you.
Want to provide that to staff. They can make sure we get copies.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And next we have Wayne Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. And I want to say a special word of appreciation to Mr. Mokrahajski as it pertains to what I'm about to say. We really are deeply grateful, and I'm more grateful than I even appear. I'm flooding with it over your generosity and your extra efforts to put Nightingale Health Sanctuary in the very spot that you elected to do that some time ago. It's so encouraging that this has worked as well as it has, that it's been a cooperative effort between Lane County Behavioral Health and its mission and our mission as the board to provide more and more housing to homeless people and to ultimately have the extraordinary vision of ending homelessness here in the county. I want to recognize that I think this is county government working extremely well. And I honor you for that. And I'm particularly grateful that you've come from Wisconsin with your talents and earnestness and genuineness and drive. We do need to find a place, and I'd ask you to begin your conversation about this when you're meeting in other settings, and wondering if you might consider laying the groundwork for the spot over on the county fairgrounds, the one most westerly on that property. We will assist you in whatever way, including reaching out to the neighbors and setting the stage for something like that property or a similar property, so that you can continue your good work. We wonder if at the end of football season we might begin another discussion to perhaps see if it serves as many purposes as it does now for the Nightingale Sanctuary to resume its place. Once again, thanks, and also a shout to Patrick Ludke for his encouragement as well. Well done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board this morning? If not, we'll move on to Commissioners' response to public comments and/or other issues and remonstrance. Any issues for the board? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. A couple of responses. Ms. Coe, thank you for your testimony today once again. After our last meeting, I spoke to you briefly and mentioned that I would be interested in talking to you and a small group of your neighbors to give you some of the information that was that was passed out and responded to at the January 27th meeting regarding Acorn Park. On January 27th, there's a public hearing on Acorn Park that was held at New Hope Covenant Church near Churchill High School. Excuse me, and it was a lengthy meeting, lasted late into the night. Some people were not able to be there. A lot of the same questions that Ms. Coe has iterated today and previously were questions that were asked at that meeting. So much of the information has been gathered already, and much of the response is available. And the full transcript of that meeting also is available, I do believe. So I'll provide that information for you. And second, to Mr. Martin, Reverend Martin, thank you very much once again for being here. I think he probably left already, but if you know, the Nightingale rest stop that is on county property over close to the behavioral health building, if you haven't had a chance to go by there, you'll see a rest stop for homeless individuals that really is working very well. And I'd like to, as Mr. Martin pointed out, I mentioned that Dr. Ludke has visited the site and has given recommendations regarding cleanliness as it applies to disease spread, and cleanliness as it applies to vermin attraction. And by and large, if you look out there, the recommendations that have been followed, and it really is a very clean-looking camp. It is an example of what a rest stop can look like. But I don't even, the word rest stop are the ones that are commonly used for it, but it really is a place for people who are trying to get out of the homelessness downward spiral that so many people are in, and people are being successful at it. And if you look at the numbers of folks that are there, many of the people have actually progressed through that camp and into different, more stable housing. This is not stable housing at the rest stop. It's not the type of housing that's designed to last for more than a few weeks for any one individual. And in fact, it's not, you know, it isn't a permanent housing situation, but it is a place for people to stay where they can keep their belongings somewhat safe and where they can maintain a certain amount of dignity. And to me, that's a lot of the issue that we're working with regarding homeless people, is giving them options that provide dignity and give them choices regarding how to move forward through the out of the homeless situation and into housing. And I'd like to once again point out that Mr. Martin said that Steve Mokraheiski has been integral in this, and Steve has been receptive to lots of ideas, and most significantly, Steve, you've spent a lot of time listening to people about it. And when you listen, you begin to erase when people listen, they begin to erase values that they have traditionally held toward homeless camps. And when you see the Nightingale camp, the one that's operated by Nightingale, and when you see the one that is operated by the City of Eugene, and also if you see the Veterans Camp that is in the process of moving from First and Chambers to a site near the Mission or on the Mission property, it really is an example of how homeless people can have an opportunity to live in dignity. Once we provide them a level of dignity, then they're able to make choices that allow them to progress through into housing. And it is a situation that has worked very well. And I'm hoping and anticipating that we will continue our work in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or remonstrance? Commissioner Lakin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things I want to mention. First of all, I want to congratulate the University of Oregon, both men's and women's track and field teams for their national championship victories. I actually was able to attend the Friday meet with the men's championship, was not able to attend the women's, but I did catch some of it off and on TV. And the reason why I bring this up is similar to what's going to happen this weekend up in the state of Washington, and that is the U.S. Open. Golf championship, and I wouldn't normally mention about the U.S. Open Golf Championship, except the course they're playing, called Chambers Bay, actually is owned by Pierce County. It's a municipal court, actually owned by the county. Kemper Sports actually manages it, but as you look on their website, the course is in the black and generates between $7 and $10 million annually. They actually expect it to go up from there after the U.S. Open, because it'll be regarded now as a U.S. Open golf course. Only the third municipal course ever in the history of the 115 years that will be actually on a municipal course. And they were very creative. I watched a program about it last night. There used to be an old rock pit, and a big one. And now today it is a world-class course, and it just leads me to believe about the opportunities we have, like with some of our, not on golf, obviously, but well, maybe, but other events. And I'm looking forward to what Travel Lane County has to say about just the NCAA track and field championships alone, what kind of revenue was generated here in our community. Because when I spoke to Commissioner Stewart, he had mentioned to me that even the hotels in Cottage Grove were packed. And so you think about what this does for our region. And just not this weekend, but the weekend after will be the U.S. Track and Field Championship. So again, we're going to see that all over again. And of course, with the World Games coming here in 2021, the Olympic trials coming again in 2016, Tracktown is generating so much revenue when what's happening and actually putting our community even in the spotlight even more as we move forward. And I say this because this really continues to be opportunities. As I listen to the legislature, and I listen to other legislators really that surround us, unfortunately, we're the only ones that don't necessarily talk about the growth of our gross domestic product. We seem to want to talk about other things. Washington keeps talking about the growth of GDP, Idaho, Utah, Nevada, even California. And Oregon doesn't seem to go there. So I think, from my perspective, what we can do as Lane County is continue to focus on how can we generate revenue, how can we create more opportunity for our citizens. Because when we talk about the issue of homelessness, and I understand there's a difference between the chronic homelessness, but also those individuals, those families that are a paycheck away. Those are some areas that we can continue to focus on and really start creating opportunities here. We have the ability here in Lane County to generate opportunities, and I would hope that our board would continue down that road. I think we've been working very well together and bringing and offering and those type of opportunities up. But we'll have a piece coming up later in our board meeting I'm looking forward to as well, that will be coming from Sarah Case from our Economic Development Department about how some opportunities that we can be involved in to help generate. So I'm going to watch the U.S. Open because I'm an avid golfer, obviously, but I was really intrigued by just the revenue that's generated from a municipal golf course that the county owns. And they contract it out to a managing company that actually operates the golf course, and talk about a win-win for the community. And so that's what I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other remonstrance or comments? So I've got a couple things I'd like to address, kind of working in reverse order here somewhat. Just for the rest of the board's knowledge, we're going to have an update next week on the rest stops from staff. So that's on the agenda for next week. It's kind of appropriate that Mr. Martin or Reverend Martin came in today. So we'll be hearing from staff about what the experience of both the city and the county were over the last 6 months or so. So it'll be a good opportunity for us to understand what we've been doing and what's worked so far. And then addressing the issue of the sponsors project. I'd just like to mention that where housing happens in the city of Eugene or any city within the state of Oregon is controlled by the statewide land use laws. And under Senate Bill 100, where they're mandated to keep a 20-year supply of housing within their urban growth boundary. And so the cities are mandated to adopt an urban growth boundary, and along with that, a master plan of how they expect to grow. And part of that master plan is assigning zoning to particular areas. And in the particular case of that area, there's some R2 zoning that is relatively medium density zoning that allows for apartments to be built on that site. You know, whether it's sponsors apartments or just plain old apartments, it's still going to be a higher density housing. That was a decision made by the city of Eugene through their land use planning efforts. And it's an effort that has to happen with every city, is deciding. Unfortunately, Hynix, Walmart, and some of the other places you mentioned are not zoned for housing. You can't put a project like sponsors there. They're specifically zoned for commercial industrial land for employment, which is another thing they have to keep a 20-year supply of within their UGB. So this all comes back to state laws around land use planning, and there was an area designated under the city's master plan long ago for higher density housing. And that's why there's apartments that are going to be located on that parcel. And really that's what it gets back to, is the city's master plan there. So, you know, whether it's a sponsors project or not, it was still going to be higher density housing in that area. And then finally, I'd just like to kind of mention that it's interesting to watch the state pass a sick leave law this last week. And I just want to kind of acknowledge the fact that the reason the state's addressing that is because of some of the actions this board took. We were the ones that said labor law should not be done in a balkanized way, municipality by municipality, county by county. It really should be done at the state level. And we utilized our authority granted to us under the state as the Board of Health to say, City of Eugene, you really can't be passing labor law, particularly as it relates to health issues and as sick leave. And we pushed that up to the state level, and that's why there was a state law passed. I just hope that the state stays consistent in thinking of labor law as a statewide power and doesn't lift the prohibition on municipal minimum wages as they discuss the minimum wage coming up. Because I think if we get into where every municipality has a little bit different labor law, we are going to kill our state's GDP. And the opportunities for folks to, you know, have employment, keep out of risk of homelessness, and we'll have to be dealing with them in, you know, temporary rest stops, is just going to get all that much worse if they don't realize we can't leave that to every little municipality to have a different set of rules, which is going to keep a lot of businesses from being able to function well in this state. As a business owner, I can tell you it would have been a crazy bookkeeping exercise for me to try and keep track of whether my employees were in or out of the Eugene city limits at any one time, relative to whether I'm tracking enough leave for each employee. Now, at least I know as long as they're working within the state of Oregon, I can track that. So I'd just like to appreciate the board for pushing that up to the state level and the state for acknowledging that and taking some action statewide. So with that, there are no further comments or remonstrance. I'd like to move on. Is there any emergency business today?
There is none.
So no emergency business. That moves us to the consent calendar, which is routine items that are approved by the board in a single motion, and these are available online. If you want to see what we're passing under this motion, you can go to our website and click on each material to see detailed items. Are there any, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Mr. Larkin.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously with Commissioner Stewart excused. So that moves us on to item 7A, which is Order 1506-1607 in the matter of awarding and accepting contracts and amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contracts and amendments in the Department of Health and Human Services. And
Good morning,
help
Commissioners.
me with your name.
Debbie Hazel, Health and Human Services, meeting again, as we did last month. You have in front of you an order from us with new contracts and amendments on it. The bulk of the new contracts are revenue agreements. They will help fund things in our department like job services, mental health and addiction services, public health, developmental disabilities, human services such as energy assistance, housing, case management, and youth services, including supervision and juvenile work crews. We also have a couple of expense contracts on as new contracts to do some low-income weatherization throughout the county and for some security services at the courthouse and youth services. There's also a list of expense or of amendments on there. A lot of them are non-financial agreements that we bring before you each year, just to let you know that those are rolling on and continuing. They're for things like data sharing, cooperative agreements in case of a crisis, things like that. We have some amendments on there for ongoing contracts and some revenue amendments. Some of our revenue sources are extending their contracts through 9/30 of 15 while they figure out what next year is going to look like, and then we'll come back to you with the 15-16 numbers.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hazel? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bozovich. Thanks very much for, once again, all the work that goes into this very short agenda item, which apparently isn't going to have a great deal of discussion. But I'd like to point out that under each of the contracts is the health implication. And I know that takes a little bit of extra work to prepare the items for our review. But in looking down there, I appreciate the work that you put into providing the health implication. And it's something that really is going to have a far-reaching effect, not only on making certain that we do consider the health impact of our actions, but also on elevating people's attention to the fact that we have an impact on people's health with pretty much every action that we do. And I'm just going to pull up one that jumps right out, and that's the Health and Human Services Contracts and Amendments. It's the DHS Jobs Program, which is a $2.5 million contract. And your health implication is something that we talk about quite often. It's the proportion of the population living in relative or absolute poverty. And you talk about income and inequality in a region, predicting the population of life expectancy, etc. So the income inequality is something that really has an impact on not only on people's individual lives, but on society, I hate to use the word society, but just on the livability of a region in general. I'm going to go on to a really important statement that you make in this one, health impact. The greater the disparity, the more likely persons living in poverty will experience poor health. Something that we always have to bear in mind when we work on public services and on human services, that not only are we providing people with what they need to exist today and to get through until tomorrow, but we're greater reaching implications of their health in general. And people living in poverty will experience a greater chance of poor health. So thank you very much once again for the work that you put into it, and thank you for the relatively new additional item of health implication area impacted.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Any other questions and comments from staff? I thought it might be appropriate to note the juvenile forest work team contract, seeing we just had the folks from Western Lane shuffle in the back of the room. It's our agreement with BLM for our youth services folks, forest team, to go out there and do work in the forest, and a lot of what they do is fire prevention work. So it's appropriate they came in right as we're looking at approving that contract. So do I have a motion on the order? Commissioner Lykin.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Order 15-06-16-07, a matter of awarding and accepting contracts and amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contracts and amendments in the Department of Health and Human Services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Stewart excused.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hazel. So, County Council announcements. I did announce earlier we will have an executive session at 1:30 up in the Board of Commissioners conference room. Do you know if there are any other announcements from County Council?
I don't believe so. Mr. Dingle is inspecting the county-run golf course referred to Commissioner Lykin as we speak, and I talked to Andy Clark. They don't have any other announcements.
I expect a full report.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure we'll get one.
Commissioner Sorensen.
I just wanted to mention regarding the golf course issue is that the Lane County Board of Commissioners referred a ballot measure to the people of Lane County to ask them if they wanted to construct a golf course on the property that we now known as the East Alton Baker Park, which was a garbage dump and was administered by the county, and then that land was reclaimed, and my predecessor on the board, Commissioner Russ, proposed a golf course that the county would operate, and I can't say specifically like Pierce County, Washington, but the concept was that you could reclaim this land that was either a gravel pit or maybe both, gravel pit and a garbage dump, reclaim this land and have it as a golf course. And as I was preparing to run for the Board of Commissioners, I think that occurred in 1994, that the voters rejected the ballot measure. And I was looking over the voting statistics on the vote for the golf course, and the precincts in my district that were on the highest parts of the South Hills had voted for the golf course. And the precincts that were more in the flatlands had voted against the golf course. But anyway, overall, the county voters did reject it, so we didn't build the golf course.
Interesting statistic. So we'll move on to county administration and announcements from the county administrator. Any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few, and I'd be happy to share a brief legislative update if you'd like. I asked Mr. Kyler for some of the topics we briefly discussed this morning, so if the board would like a quick update on sick leave, minimum wage, Community Correction Act funding, and 3194, I can do that. A couple other items that I'll update you first on. We have not talked at great length here about the South Willamette Economic Development Corporation. Commissioner Lykin and I serve on that board, and this is the reincarnation of our efforts around regional economic development in Lane County. So a partnership between Lane County, the City of Eugene, the City of Springfield, and the chambers in Eugene and Springfield, as well as a number of private sector representatives that have formed this body, and we are, I'll let Commissioner Lykin share any additional comments that he would like, but I just wanted to share with the board that we're in the process of recruiting for an executive director for the South South Willamette Economic Development Corporation. We have interviews later this week, and so we're still moving forward. That board is meeting regularly. I think there's good attendance and participation there, and a real desire to make sure that we move forward positively and proactively in generating great economic development activity throughout our region. And so I just want to share that brief update with you that we're meeting, we're working, and we are recruiting, and we're in the stages now of interviewing candidates for that important leadership position in our community and for that organization. I know Commissioner Lyken has been actively involved in recruiting folks from the private sector to serve on that board, and so that work continues, and we'll provide more updates as that organization continues to form. But I just wanted to provide that quick one for you. Two other brief updates. We've been meeting on a public market, a year-round public market. This is a concept that the City of Eugene, Lane County, the farmers, and others in the community have been passionate about moving forward, and we formed a task force that includes representatives from Lane County, City of Eugene, the farmers market, Lane Community College, the University of Oregon, the Fifth Street Market area, and others. And we've had 2 meetings. We meet again later this week, and I think it's a positive and productive conversation to move forward with a discussion, not specifically about where a year-round public market would be located. That is part of the discussion, and we're looking at this stage at about 4 different locations in downtown Eugene. A couple of them are owned by Lane County. At least one is owned by the City of Eugene, another by eWeb. So those are being contemplated, but more importantly, to initially talk about developing a business plan and model for how what a year-round public market would look like. How do we potentially pursue a phased approach, and then ultimately we'll get to the appropriate location. And at the same time that we're having that discussion, that we're also moving forward with the feasibility study on a future development of a courthouse. So all of these things are moving forward together, and I just want to share that brief update with the board that while we haven't come back to you and had specific updates, there's a lot of work that's happening to do feasibility studies and analysis and bring partners together to move those important issues for our organizations and our community forward, and we'll bring you additional updates on that. And another topic that we've talked about that is part of our strategic plan, year-round public market, is part of the strategic plan, a effort to engage our community, our external community, in issues around equity, diversity, inclusion, human rights is also part of our strategic plan, and we're having another meeting this evening with a number of representatives from the community to further that topic. And we don't know where that's going to lead to and what ultimately the solution is, but we have a lot of really great people around the table who are committed to equity and diversity work in the community and in our organization. And we feel confident that we'll be able to come up with a thoughtful process and model to move forward and continue to improve our work there, in addition to the internal equity work that we're continuing to do to expand on our connection with the community. So those were the quick updates that I had. And Mr. Chair, I'll ask you if you'd like. I'm happy to share updates on state legislative issues if the board feels that you're fully up to speed, then I don't need to take that time.
Well, we got about 5 minutes before our 10 a.m. time certain, and I'd link, if you have a thumb drive with your show, if you want to come up and start getting that ready rather than at the time, you won't distract us too much. Yeah, I would appreciate an update if everybody is willing here. You got about 5 minutes here.
Okay, I'll do that. And I asked Mr. Kyler this morning for an update on these 4 issues that I mentioned, and he very quickly got back to me, and I believe he's up in Salem today working on these issues, but I appreciate the quick turnaround to give you these updates from Mr. Kyler. So on the sick leave issue, Senate Bill 454 has passed both the House and Senate. It creates a statewide standard for sick leave provision, with the exception of carving out Portland's existing ordinance. The measure preempts Eugene's ordinance. A companion measure is also advancing that would preempt local governments from passing ordinances addressing flex time provisions for 2 years. So that's the update on sick leave. As I mentioned, and as I give you an update on minimum wage. We're looking at both of these, sick leave and minimum wage, as well as the others, to really understand where is Lane County going to be additionally impacted, particularly as it relates to our part-time and seasonal type employees. On the minimum wage issue, Speaker Kotek announced yesterday a proposal that she will advance immediately as an amendment to House Bill 2012. It would bump Oregon's minimum wage to $11 per hour on January 1st, 2016, and then increase annually by $1 to a high of $13 per hour in 2018. So a phased-in approach beginning January 1st, 2016 at 11 up to $13. And it would further lift the existing preemption on local government's ability to set their own minimum wage. The measure faces a tough road, especially in the Senate. And on Community Corrections Act funding, CCA funding was funded at $247 million for the biennium, and it meets the criteria for avoiding local government opt-out. It's contained within the Department of Corrections budget and is likely to be heard by the full Ways and Means Committee on Friday. And then on House Bill 3194, the Justice Reinvestment Initiative Program has been funded at $33.7 million. That's an increase from what was originally proposed in the co-chairs' budgets. So it's funded at $33.7 million for the biennium, contained within the Criminal Justice Commission's budget. It's on its way to the House and Senate. In the full Ways and Means discussion, Co-Chair Devlin announced they were still working to increase that funding via the last bill out of the building. If you recall, the prior governor had committed to around $52 million in funding in the biennium for that. 54 million, thank you, 54 million for that. That was brought down significantly. It's now at 33.7. That 33.7 includes a $5 million sweep from the Department of Corrections budget, which previously had been called jail support. So that's important to know. If you actually take out $5 million from the 33.7, we're at 28.7 million of where the 3194 is, because $5 million was swept from another and brought into there. So we're monitoring that, and we'll update you on all of those as they continue to move forward.
So basically, the legislature is currently proposing to fund about half of what the promise was under 3194, because 28 million is basically half of 54 million. It's pretty not very encouraging in a lot of ways, because there are a lot of good programs that come from that, and the state realized savings in not constructing prisons, and it was supposed to reinvest the full amount of those savings. So they're taking that money and using it elsewhere, which, you know, I'm not sure where the elsewhere is, but it's not investing in trying to prevent recidivism, which I think ultimately they're going to end up building those prisons and losing the savings because they're not investing in those programs to prevent that. So I appreciate that update.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, one clarification, that the Department of Corrections budget bill is up this afternoon in Ways and Means, not Friday. Thank you.
Thanks. So those folks at home, contact your local representatives and tell them that they need to fully fund the community corrections and House Bill 3194. Commissioner Likens.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, it's my understanding on when Speaker Kotek introduced her minimum wage bill that there were a lot of crickets chirping on the Senate side. So we'll kind of see where that goes. But that's political insiders are talking about she's doing this because she's preparing to run for mayor of Portland. But anyway, that's another story. I do have a question, though, for you at your next cell meeting. I have been hearing a little bit that potentially there's conversation, Eugene Airport maybe go from municipal to, there's talk about going to regional. And so maybe if you could maybe talk to Mr. Reese and find out if that's actually serious conversation. We had these conversations a long time ago, my first term as mayor, and they didn't really go anywhere, but it would seem this might have a little bit more teeth to it now. So maybe at your next cell meeting, we could maybe get an update. And I don't know if Commissioner Farr is on top of this amount either, but these are some things I've just been hearing, so. And I'll give a report a little bit and under Commissioner's business as well on your report on the South Willamette economic as well, so.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And one thing I know we're at 10 o'clock. I'll
Yeah.
just close by saying at our cell meeting last week, Mr. Reese brought up, and we had a great conversation with Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County about the need for all of us to work together, including LCOG and LTD and all the regional partners, as we coordinate and plan for the 2021 World events. And I thought it was a great discussion that we're early on saying, let's not all go do our own thing.
Yep.
Here, let's pool our resources, let's pool our strategy. And so the extent to which that is, part of their thought process, we'll look into it. But I think it's another indication that we're working really well as a region and focusing on doing the right things for our community from an economic and community development standpoint.
Thank you. It looks like we're still working out some technical issues.
I'd like to go along. Unfortunately, our AV show has some complications, so we could either go forth without any pictures this morning. They're trying to work it out right now. If you'd like some extra time, that'll certainly shorten our presentation if we don't have our slideshow for you. I think we can still meet the need as far as what we'd like to update you all on without the aids and assistance, but I guess I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. Well, we have a 10:45 coming on the heels of you, so why don't we start our item 9B, which is the discussion of the previous and current year fire seasons, and then the forest land classification. And if you want to come up and sit at the table, Link, and introduce yourself, and maybe we can start out with the discussion about forest land classification that maybe doesn't need pictures, or is that?
She's actually the one who is
Oh,
trying to
okay.
get she's my AV specialist. Do I need to speak in the microphone here?
Yes, please, because that's the way we record our minutes is with the audio and the visual cameras and all that. So if you don't speak in the mic, one, the audience has a difficulty hearing, and two, we don't get a clear recording for our minutes. So if you'd like to start and introduce yourself, and when your staff comes in, you can introduce them. So.
Very well. My name is Link Smith. I'm the district forester for the Oregon Department of Forestry's Western Lane District, headquartered out of Veneta. Joining me here shortly will be Greg Wagenblast. He is my counterpart for the South Cascade District, district forester there, headquartered out of Springfield here. And then also you'll see AJ Hudzik. She's one of our permanent forest officers and our GIS specialist, the computer savvy one of the group here. And I apologize, like I said, we had a thumb drive with all of our presentations on it, and we ran into a few complications with that thumb drive, it appears. So we may not have as many graphics to demonstrate with you here today, so I apologize for that inconvenience.
All right, well, maybe we can get them emailed or something.
Most definitely, and again, the real goal for us here today was to give you a recap of our 2014 season last year, a little bit of a precursor to what we're expecting in 2015, and then to finish it with a discussion on forest land classification. So I'll probably still stick to that procedure or that direction at this time. So just to give you a little bit of a recap, if you go back to 2013, our agency had the most expensive fire season it's ever had. And you're familiar with the Douglas Complex, I'm sure, and you've heard a lot of those statistics. We have an assurance policy in our agency, actually through Lloyd's of London, that helps do large fire cost funding. We blew clear through that and spent upwards of and over $100 million in 2013. You hope after a season like that you don't have another big season, and 2014 didn't help us there at all. We had another, it wasn't as expensive as 2013, but another very large fire season last year. In this county, you saw a lot of the attention to the Deception Complex up out of Sweet Home there. So federal fire, we absolutely provided some assistance, and I think Greg Wagenblast, when he comes in, will probably give you a little more recap on that. So statewide, a big year. But what I can speak about is in the Western Lane District. What we had was a fairly standard year. We had our indices were high. We had a lot of folks on overtime and helping support the statewide effort. As a district, we bring on about 30 seasonal firefighters in addition to our 20 permanent staff that we have there in the various programs. And we were providing a lot of statewide assistance. And fortunately, we had a fairly quiet fire season last year until September 5th. September 5th, somebody we never did catch, but they lit a slash pile, actually in the exact same section as the original Oxbow fire of 1966. And what's happening there is that Oxbow burn, which burnt 45,000 acres of BLM, and back then, God, I'm just dropping my names there. Anyways, Roseburg owned lands now for private and federal BLM grounds that we protect under contract. That fire, again, what's happening on the Oxbow right now is those trees are of a mature enough age that they have moved back in the Oxbow, and it's time to start harvesting some of those trees they planted back in the late 60s there. Really neat to see. It's a sea of green out there. Things have really come back well. Phenomenal timber growing ground. Unfortunately, again, somebody lit a slash pile on a really bad day. We were in level 3 closures at the time. One of those days that you do not want to have a fire. And about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, one of our fire engines actually reported the fire to us, saw the column of smoke. And so they were the first report we got was one of our patrols. We were quickly able to pick it up on our smoke detection cameras. So I have some fantastic views of that, and if things fall short, I will send you that PowerPoint presentation of the progression of that incident. But basically at about 5:01 p.m., from the camera angle, there is no smoke visible. And 8 minutes later, there's a significant column you see developing. And within a half an hour, it's quite amazing the amount of the size of the column and where that was going. So we've got it, looks like printed out here, but not for view at this time. So
I was going to say, I could go over my section too, because mine doesn't have too many pictures if we wanted to do that first.
I'll go ahead and carry on
Okay.
here. See, my pictures aren't that good. I'll send it to you later. But the couple things of note there were that the Yellow Point fire, by 10 o'clock that night, it started at 5 p.m. By 10 o'clock that night, we ordered one of our state fire incident management teams. Because it was, definitely beyond the capacity of our local district to handle on our own. We briefed the team the next morning, and Incident Management Team 3 from the Department of Forestry took over management of that fire. And the long story is that we spent a little over $5 million suppressing it, and that does not include the resource damage to the timber, of which right now there's some significant salvage operations going on, but that's just $5 million in suppression costs, so extremely significant. As far as the county, one of the things I really want to throw a thank you out for is when you bring in an incident management team like that, you're bringing in a lot of hardware, you're bringing in kitchens. I think at one time we had 32 or 34 20-person hand crews assigned to that fire. It ended up being 800 acres is all, and what's interesting there too, you talk about the steepness of the Coast Range, there were no bulldozers on that fire. It was 100% hand-lined with a little bit of roads that tie it in, but it's such steep ground. We had a lot of personnel, and where we logistically support that many people, we did it at the Alma Work Center there at the old Alma Work Camp.
You're welcome.
And I was going to point at you there, we had talked for years about where we would house a fire camp if we needed one. And those, in a lot of districts, schools are our first alternative. And unfortunately, typically our fire season is later in the season, and schools aren't necessarily a good option. And we've always had that one kind of in the back of our mind. We'll go to Alma. We'll go to Alma. And it ends up the fire was 10 minutes from Alma. The thing we ran into with a little difficulty that night was actually getting a hold of the right people to say yes.
And you never did.
And, well, somebody did. And I know you said yes. But it was pretty amazing. It's a little frustrating, to sometimes make those calls, because it was in the middle of the night. We're trying to make this all happen on a Friday night. But the reality is that the right people did step forward. We found the right people to make the decisions. The county public works was out there. The site isn't actively maintained anymore. So we had, the county provided mowers in the middle of the night. They started mowing the field there at 3 a.m. from, waist high to chest high grass to where we could actually put tents and crews, and we had Department of Corrections crews there as well. So of course a stressful night, but it really turned out to be just a phenomenal co-location and a tremendous boon or benefit to our efforts there. And I think fortunately we even left the facility better than we found it. I don't mean that in a negative sense, but we had our Department of Corrections crews working on it. And again,
Mr. Chair, if I may comment on that ever so briefly, you guys were excellent stewards, not just that night, but since then. You made the forest camp look like a usable facility again, and consequently we're in the process of finding ways to use it. Before you guys came in that night, it didn't look so good. After you left, it looked like it was a workable camp once again. So
thank you. That was our goal.
Certainly pulled your own weight on that one.
Well, that was our goal, to leave it better than we found it. And again, just want to thank, there's a lot of people that were involved in those decisions that night, and since that time that I haven't had a chance to say thank you to everybody, but all in all, that really helped our effort there.
Sheriff Turner called me in the middle of the night, and I had an option of one word, or could I say yes or no, and I chose yes that night.
Thank you. I don't know what I'd have done otherwise. It was a lot of stress that night. Anyway, so that was kind of where I was going to kick off on 2014. Try to just move into classification. All right, so I think at this time what we'll do, A.J. Hudzik is going to give you a little bit of overview of classification. What I'll tell you about that, just to give you the broad brush approach there, is that there's been a classification effort, and there's laws and statutes in effect there that on how we classify lands, whether it be forest land or grazing, and how we assess those lands for fire protection. Majority of our funding on how we suppress and protect our lands from fire is based on an assessment. And so if lands basically can carry fire for at any point during the year, they pay an assessment on those lands. And there's been a lot of changes, and you don't have to look very far back to see the expansions of our wildland urban interface areas, the growth population we've seen in the county. And so our goal is to reclassify the lands, basically start from kind of scratch, I guess, so to speak, with a committee to look at those lands that will carry fire, and then we'll move into assessing those lands and making sure that the people, the tax lots within those, pay their fair share, their equitable share of the firefighting cost. So I just want to make it clear that the process that we're looking to start on does not increase our budget. It just more equitably distributes or makes sure the people that should be paying are, and if there's lands that should not be paying forest patrol, won't be paying forest patrol. So AJ is going to give you a little more of a background on that, because we're starting that effort here in Lane County.
So yeah, as you said, my name is A.J. Hudzik. I'm on the fire crew at the Western Lane District as a forest officer and a GIS specialist. So please excuse me at my presenting skills. Normally I'm either fighting fire or on the computer. And actually it looks like we might have a presentation. So if you guys could wait 1 second here. Let's see what we got going on.
Our goal here today, too, is really at an overview of what's coming. There are going to be some action items from the board as far as helping to line up a committee. So those steps are coming, but we didn't want any of that kind of hit you blind without a little bit of an overview as to what we're hoping to achieve here, and kind of gain your understanding and knowledge about this before we start hitting you with any action items or requests. So again, this is meant to be a real general overview with no decisions from you at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if Link mentioned it, but ODF as a whole protects 16 million acres of forest land. And I'm sorry, but this presentation is a little bit one-sided to the Western Lane District. We will be classifying both the Eastern Lane and Western Lane, but we're going to start with our district first. So the Western Lane District protects about 75 or 755,000 acres. And as Link mentioned, our primarily source of revenue is that forest patrol assessment. And what is the forest patrol assessment? Well, it is a combination of our fire patrol assessment paid by the public landowners or the private landowners, and then also 50% funding comes from the general fund. And here are our rates right here, if anyone was curious. I know some of you might be familiar with it, but it's basically $1.14 per acre, unless you have 17 acres or less. There's a minimum charge of $18.75. Then there's also a $47.50 surcharge if you have any improvements on your land. So currently, as Link mentioned, this is how we do get the money. Our lands are not classified in Western Lane. So we go through the assessment process every year, review the tax lots that are and aren't paying, and try to keep those. This visual explains kind of the difference between classification and the assessment process. And basically, the classification will go through a process of a committee to decide on who's paying or not. And if people want to appeal that, they have to go through the county circuit court. They have to go, And the assessments resides with ODF and the Board of Forestry, and they would appeal that process through the Board of Forestry. So we're trying to move over to that classification versus that assessment process that we're currently in right now. The forest land classification actually started back in the 1930s, and they were waiting until I got here at the Western Lane District to actually classify their lands. So that's why it's taken so long. Some of the other districts have actually classified theirs, but as I've mentioned, I think we don't have any prior classification to work off of. And the classification process identifies which lands are forest lands, and then further identifies the lands as timber or grazing for the assessment purposes. The purpose of the forest land classification is to develop that accurate classification process for the assessment rules, to develop equitable forest land assessment across the state, and to allow the involvement of the local interests, the county government, and the local landowners. Everything within our district boundary will be overlooked by the classification committee to determine if it is timber and if it should be assessed. And everything's guided by the 1937 Forest Land Classification Act and the statutes and the Oregon statutes. There have been some revisions since then in subsequent years. So these are the three different classes that they can be determined. Either Class 1 is timber, Class 2 is grazing, and Class 3 is the agriculture class. But over here west of the Cascades, forest land shall be classified Class 1 if it is west of the summit of the Cascade Mountains. So we do not actually have to determine if it's grazing or not, which makes it a little bit easier. And this kind of gives you just a little visual. It's hard to read up there, but those little bullets say everything west is timber, and you can see kind of where the Class 3 grazing goes, and then the Class 2 is also. So here is a map of the current status of the forest land classification across all the ODF districts. The green needs updating, that dark color there, and of course Lane County is included in that. The light green is in progress, and then all the other colors have classified within the last 5 years, have updated their land. So you can see we still have a big chunk of Oregon to work on, and Lane County would love to get theirs done. So the Forest Land Classification Committee is a big part of this process. Us as a district is required to coordinate with you guys on forming this classification committee. And the committee follows the Oregon Revised Statutes and gets guidance from the Oregon Department of Forestry. It's a 6-person committee, 3 of the members are appointed by the county commissioners. 1 is timber, 1 is grazing, and 1 is a member at large. Since we do not have any grazing lands on our district, we were going to look into either appointing another timber member, or we might just be able to drop that 6th member. The 3 other members are going to be appointed by the OSU Extension, appointed by ODF, and then the Oregon State Fire Marshal. Each member serves a 4-year term and may be reappointed. I grabbed this out of our forest land classification manual because I thought it was important to read it. It says the composition of the Forest Land Classification Committee is the single most influential piece of the forest land classification process. Committee members should be well respected by the landowners they represent and knowledgeable about fire protection within the region. While county commissioners select 3 of the 6 members, the district representative should be prepared to consult landowners prior to the recommendation, the commissioners or appointing body during the initial phase of the process. Members need to be committed to the process and are expected to fully represent their landowners. So we're going to be prepared here in a little bit to recommend some people to you guys that would like to be on the committee, so you don't have to search them out yourself. Although if you know some people, I'm sure we'd be willing to work with you guys. After we get that committee formed, some more on the process of the classification here. That committee will go over each of the townships within our district on a sections quarter-by-quarter basis to determine the classification. And the maps that we will provide will be one showing our current assessment status, basically who's paying. That's the one on the left there. All the colored areas are who's paying. And then on the right, we also have an aerial image so they can kind of see what the layout of the land is, if it's forested, if it's not. Along with those printed maps, we'll also be able to use Google Earth views and any of the resources on the computers with GIS. This, I forgot to mention, we did complete last winter the Douglas County portion of our district. We actually got it classified. This was a view of who is paying right now in that chunk of our district. And there was actually only 2 tax lots that were not paying because we've kept up on our assessments very well. So, and it's all forested, mostly private landowners. The green over on the left is the Forest Service, and we have not been classifying Forest Service land. So our classification ended up looking like this. The green was timber, and the Forest Service land was not classified. And then here's our Western Lane, or Lane County portion of the Western Lane District to show who's currently paying right now. And since it's not a very zoomed in view, it's hard to tell, but there's some white spots on the east side of the district and the west sides. A lot of the middle is actually already paying part of the association. So when we go through this process, we're thinking it will be fairly straightforward what lands to classify, what lands not, because we already have a lot of people who are paying the Forest Patrol assessment. After that preliminary classification by the committee, we're required to hold 1 or more community meetings, and these meetings are just to inform the public of what's going on, show them the maps. They can ask questions, just kind of let them know what we're doing on the lands that they live on. And then following those community meetings will be the time where they can object to any of our classification or make suggestions in the public hearing that we'll hold. After the public hearing and any adjustments to the classification, that's when we adopt the final classification and file it with the county clerk for a 30-day appeal period. And when we're doing this whole process, a lot of districts work back from March 1st of the year they want to file the classification, because that's when you have to notify any newly added landowners that they've been added to the Forest Patrol assessment. This is just another overview of the flow of what I tried to go over with all those slides right there. So we've reviewed all the laws, we've gotten all our information, obtained maps, and we're kind of right in the middle there that says form the classification committee. That is the step we are at right now. And then the following steps would be editing the maps, holding those community meetings, and doing the finalization of our forest land classification. And here is my last slide again, kind of pointing where we're at. Once we form that classification committee, the first step after that will be actually training the committee as to what they need to do and how they classify the lands. We'll do Western Lane District first, as I stated, and then we'll jump over to the Eastern Lane District. And as one other side note, I guess we've had a Senate Bill 360 committee. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Senate Bill 360. I have a link there if we give you the PowerPoint. I'm fairly new to it, but it has to do with fuels reduction in the urban, wildland urban interface areas. They also have a committee that needs to be put together, and we were thinking we might be able to do one and the same with the Senate Bill 360 committee and the Forest Land Classification Committee if those members are willing to take on both tasks. So it's a little extra added stuff. And that's all I had. Do you want to add anything, Link? Yes.
As AJ mentioned there, this is, Greg and I have been talking about this for several years and the need to do this. And again, if we initially, if you'll see most districts do it district by district, but being Lane County, we split Lane County fairly equally here. And we have an awful lot of landowners on both sides of the freeway. So we really wanted to do Lane County at one time. And so when you hear AJ say we're starting Western Lane District, we're kind of in negotiation, Greg and I, on that a little bit and how we want to do that. The reality is I don't think there's a real boundary between our districts as far as how we want to implement and pull this off. AJ happens to have the GIS skills that are really necessary to do a project like this, and she's Western Lane employee right now, but it's basically a shared district project here that we're going to be working on together, and so we'll kind of see how that plays out there. And if you had anything to add there, Greg. So with that, the only thing, I'm going to turn it over to Greg and let him give more of the fire season stuff now that we've got a few pictures up there, but I do want to, can I blast through, can you fast forward that real quick for me? I'm going to go through, that's the Yellow Point fire last year. There's our fire crew, give another, we'll blast through this. I just want to take you to the camera views here. Go ahead and pass through that one. Wow, it doesn't show very good. Anyway, that first photograph was from our, we have a camera on top of Roman Nose in Douglas County, but there's a few minutes later, I can't see the times very well either. That's, okay, that's... So
it's 5:01 in the first image, and then it moves to 5:08.
You can see the column forming 8 minutes later.
And then we jump to 5:14.
15 minutes later.
5:34.
So look at the progression there, and 30 minutes from when you saw no smoke to that. Again, that's a fire on a really bad day to have a fire. I mean, the last thing I'll really say there is it was interesting. That's about the time we ordered the fire team. You can see the spot fires out in front of it that night.
11:44. Yep.
What's interesting there is as big a fire as that was in Lane County, nobody knew about it. That's the following day. You can see the spread, how it went in all directions, but all the smoke was blowing. We had the east winds that day. So any smoke that anybody smelled in the Eugene area was coming off of Deception. So everybody thought the only fire in Lane County was in Deception Creek, and we had a $5 million fire going on here in Western Lane District, and nobody knew about it. The last thing you'll see, there's a picture of the Yellow Point fire in comparison to the original 1966 Oxbow fire. And there's your work center. That's taken from an airplane there, and you can see all the kitchen crews and camping, and you can see the mowing job that your crews did for us at 3 a.m. that day, which was, again, extremely appreciative. So, okay, I'm going to move on to Greg's here. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Greg Wagenblast. I'm the district forester for South Cascade District, which is on the east side of the freeway in Lane County and also up in Lynn County. We have an office out of Sweet Home and an office in Springfield. So this is just basically our crew that we've got for protecting all of eastern Lane County and Lynn County. We make up 2 offices. We've got scattered guard stations up on the east side of Lane County. As Link, works the western Lane side of it, we hold an interagency fire school up in Sweet Home that involves Forest Service, BLM, ODF. Actually, BIA is involved with it as well. And so you got a lot of the ODF districts between Western Lane, South Cascade District, West Oregon, that kind of thing. And it's a great school. It's been going on for, I have no idea anymore, I think 15 plus years now. And it's part of our ability for all the wildland agencies to work together and build that bond with our folks and stuff. This is just a chart there showing you the one on the top left. If you look at the yellow line and stuff, those are our fire danger indices, and that dotted line across the middle of it there is what we consider our percentile, where if the fire danger is higher than that, it's got a significant chance of having a large fire during that day or that time period. And so if you go back and look at like the Yellow Point fire on the Western Lane chart, it would have happened when it was above that line. So we do a bunch of analysis every couple of years to readjust those and take a look at that. So it gives the fire managers an ability to know when we hit that threshold, if and when we may need to have additional resources available or have contingency plans going. Link had a bad fire on his side of the freeway. We had a number of lightning events come through on our district, and all the yellow dots up there are actual lightning strikes that occurred during one of these events. We ended up having probably 15 to 16 fires come out of that we suppressed out of a 2 or 3 day period. The largest one was on Dexter Creek, and so the whole complex of fires that we had was named the Dexter Creek Complex. While this was going on, the Forest Service up on the Willamette National Forest up out of Oak Ridge, the Middle Fork Ranger District, I think they picked up about 80 fires that same day. So we got the good end of the storm, and they picked up quite a few more, had a lot more activity. As an example, I talked about the large fire days. When Yellow Point took off on Western Lane, we had a fire that started on our side of the freeway down out of Row River. We called it the Row River 10,000 fire. It was right on the county road, started on one side of the county road. We got the call, responded to it. By the time we had resources and stuff on that, it had jumped across the county road into a slash unit that Weyerhaeuser owned. Had been piled, had not been burned yet. They had just finished logging it the year before during that winter. And so this is an example of one of those days where things were going really bad. Luckily for us, unfortunately for us, Link's fire started about 15 minutes before ours got called in. So they had already gathered up all of the resources, including helicopters and crews and things. So we were behind the power curve. We were lucky in the fact that Forest Service had brought in some scooper planes, had them staged at the Eugene Airport last summer, but they were on an assignment down in Medford. They were able to pull those out of Medford, get them back up here, and so these planes were scooping water out of the Dorena Reservoir, which was, like a 5-minute turnaround by the time they dipped, turned around, and came back on the fire. There were 3 of those planes, and so one was always dropping, one was scooping, and one was inbound to the fire, ready to lay down. So, they are a great tool for us, at least our district. We've done some calculations, and we've got reservoirs in South Cascade District from eastern Lane County all the way up into Lynn County, where basically there's not more than about 15 miles anywhere from a reservoir, that one of those planes could scoop out of. So the flight time is very minimal compared to using a retardant plane, that kind of thing. So anyway, some other significant fires for our district. We had a Quartz Creek fire that was a couple acres. The big one that started off the season was the Springfield Mill fire. We responded, it was right across the street. We responded a bunch of resources over there to assist the fire departments, along with dispatching the Weyerhaeuser helicopter to assist them as well. And then we did have, for you guys, I believe you guys were aware of this last summer, out at Mount Pisgah, they had a fire from trying to do some mowing and things like that, and we were able to get out there and take care of that as well. As Link brought up, the Deception fire up on the Willamette National Forest was a big activity center for a lot of the summer. We were engaged with that with the Forest Service. We rolled through, I think, like 5 or 6 fire teams during that time period. And currently, last time I was informed from our folks up at the Middle Fork, there was still some smoke in it this winter, so it's going to be one of those fires that we're going to be keeping an eye on again this summer as well. Okay, statewide fires in 2014 was a really busy season. We had 12 ODF Incident Management Team deployments that occurred. This shows you some of the fire activity over the years, and you can see how the last couple of years we've been pretty busy statewide for the number of fires that are out there. This is just a chart showing each one of those little boxes on the bottom is one of the ODF team deployments that occurred out there. So it just gives you a flavor of things started early in the season and they continued all the way through into the fall type of thing. This is just another example of the lightning events. The state had a lot of lightning throughout the summer, and so this is just one of those that demonstrates some of that activity and taken care of. Remarkable. So 2015 fire season, everybody wants to know what it's going to look like. Well, we'll tell you probably in November or December. It's the best thing we can do. Our best estimates right now is this chart shows wildfire risk, and how it's starting out July and August, how it stretches up into the lower part of the valley here. Precipitation-wise, it's expected to be drier than normal. I don't know, we don't get that much rain anyways during the summertime, but basically the rain that we do get typically is out of the lightning events, and so my hope is that we're still going to have wet lightning events, but this could be indicating that, they may be on the drier side of it or something. Temperature-wise, they're saying it's going to be warmer than normal. So, what we've been seeing already this spring is, playing right into what the forecasts are talking about. Drought monitoring, I know you guys have already made that declaration request and it's been approved. So, Lane County's in a drought. A lot of other counties are going into that same mode of drought declarations. And this is just one of those charts that's demonstrating that same thing. You probably have seen it before. This is just showing you the example of 2014 versus 2015 and how the one on the top left is 2014. The bottom right is a demonstration of 2015. So last year was a busy year. And this year they're expecting, fire danger is going to encompass even more of the state than it did last year. And then this is just the transition this summer, the expectations right now of, what June looked like versus what July's risk is. And then as we go into August and September, it's still looking like the whole entire state's going to be at high fire risk. This is just a quick snapshot of aviation resources that we've got for the agency locked down right now. And you can see a scattering of helicopters and airplanes down in southern Oregon. And there's a couple based out of Salem, but a lot of the stuff that's in southern Oregon or even on the east side, those are able to be moved around the state. So if we get into something going over here in Lane County or Lynn County, the Willamette Valley, we're able to put in a request to move some of those over to this area as well. And that just gives you the numbers right there. So, you know, we've got quite a few aircraft available to our agency, not including what the Forest Service and BLM secure up for the year as well. And this is just one of the last ones here, what has already been occurring this year. So, you know, we've had a lot of fire activity. We've had some larger fires already occur out there. And everybody's looking at what the risk factors are and trying to be prepared for what's coming at us the next 2 or 3 months. And then this is basically where we stand right now on using our calculations and determining risk factors out there as to a significant fire. So, you know, this paints a picture of we're only in June, and a good chunk of the state is already at high potential for having a significant fire, which would be a fire that costs the agency over $20,000, $25,000 to suppress it. So, you know, that's getting up there in size and scope. That's what we've got for our crystal ball for 2015.
So questions, Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Now, you have a contract with BLM, is that correct? So you work with...
Yes, we provide suppression on the west side of the Cascades to BLM through a contract. Yes.
So the question I had then, Senator Wyden was out here in March, I mean, pretty early on, talking about fire. And so he and Senator Crapo from Idaho obviously are working this is high on their agenda, is the issue of fire suppression. So maybe explain a little bit how, I mean, we're talking about federal money and how the federal dollars, maybe you talked about different resources the BLM has and whether it's financial or actual infrastructure type, you know, whether it's equipment or so. How does that flow into your department, or does it?
You want to answer that?
Well, they have a severity program, and so when the fire danger, using our charts and things like that we were showing you for the fire danger, basically once we get up to hitting that threshold for significant fires and things, we can put in a request through BLM to secure some severity funding to help pay for additional helicopters or crews or something like that. So that's really one of the biggest advantages. Plus, you know, both BLM Forest Service, they've got the ability to move aircraft around the nation. And so, like, bringing those Scooper planes in last summer was a big benefit that the federal government was able to do to support the state of Oregon and the west side of the Cascades.
And then finally, was it about 3 years ago, it almost seemed like half of Colorado burned up. So do you have maybe an expectation that, or are you kind of preparing yourselves for kind of an Oregon version of Colorado maybe this year? Because like you said, we're already at that threshold now. And so is this kind of where mentally you're preparing now?
Well, just to give you an example, today we went into fire season today, so which coincided perfectly with the countywide burn ban. Every district, ODF district in the state, is now in fire season, which is far earlier than usual. We're a good 2 weeks. Typically, we wouldn't be in a fire season for a couple weeks. I'd estimate that our dryness level, we're a month ahead. And yes, they're predicting another really bad fire season. And, you know, it's bad to have one. It's really bad to have two. And now we're looking at 3 in a row. And so predictions are out there. Fortunately, all agencies are gearing up the same way there. So there's going to be an awful lot of sharing, whether it be resources, personnel. We're going to have to, because nobody can do it alone. So
Very good. That's the question I had, Commissioner, or Chair Bozovich. Thank you very much. Great presentations. I have pollen throat this morning, so I apologize for that, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.
If you have any questions, please feel free to give Greg or I a call, and we will be sending you some more information. Mr. Sorensen.
Just wanted to kind of connect the bigger picture to what you're dealing with. My understanding is that NOAA said that the concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere in pre-industrial times was about 120 parts per million. And half of the increase since to the present has occurred since 1980. The NOAA apparently has a observatory in Hawaii called the Mauna Loa Observatory, and in 2013 they reported concentrations of CO2 at 400 parts per million. That was in 2013. But in March of this year, 2015, they recorded an average of more than 400 parts per million for an entire month. Not 400 per day, but a total of an average of 400 parts per million per day. So it looks like, just on a worldwide level, things are getting that much hotter. And I'm wondering if you showing us the regional temperature and drought and other factors that lead to either human-caused or lightning-caused forest fires, whether you believe there's any connection here, and secondly, are we spending enough on prevention? So kind of connect the big picture international to what you're dealing with, and also, are we spending enough money on prevention?
How much time we have left?
Just
I'll
5 years.
Yeah, we're already over time.
I'll give you my quick overview, and that is we've had some really bad historic fires in the past as well, and historic seasons. I'll be honest with you, I don't look at those long, that's a little out of my interest range or my pay grade, however you want to look at that, to look so, I guess, philosophically toward the past. What I can tell you right now is we've got a bad season coming in front of us one way or another, and we need to address that. Prevention-wise, it's always hard to get enough to determine prevention. It's hard to tell how effective your prevention programs are. It's hard to gauge the fire that doesn't start. I certainly think that that's an avenue we need to continue to explore even further, and we're doing that again with our Senate Bill 360, some of the fuels reduction grants we have going on in the county right here. We're working with the city and BLM on some more grant work and fuels reduction kind of stuff. I definitely think that's an avenue that we can continue to explore, especially in the age that we're in as far as the information age, whether it be tweeting and you name it. There's avenues that we could probably improve upon. We need to get out of your hair here and let you.
Yeah. So if you'll indulge me for a quick second, because I do have a question that pertains to the classification. One of the last steps is filing with the county clerk. Is there a cost to the county for, what do we do with that when you file this? What are we required to do? And is there a funding stream that comes with that filing to the county?
This should have literally no impact on the county other than we may be trading some little GIS layers and some work at that level a little bit. But for the most part, this will be pretty much all an ODF run funded process. It's just literally part of process when it says it needs to be through the county clerk. So I don't anticipate really any funding impact to the county at all. Again, this is more just equitably paying for some of the resources you saw demonstrated up there and making sure that those people that have that protection necessity are paying for that protection necessity.
Oh, great.
Just a very quick request. You'd suggested that you could provide the PowerPoint presentation to us.
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that.
You bet. And you will be receiving some subsequent information, probably coming from Greg or myself primarily, and AJ there. So you'll start seeing a little bit more written stuff. We just didn't want to blindside you, so kind of this was meant to be an overview. And so when you see something come in the future, you'll be clear on what it is.
Yeah. Thanks again for asking the question last September.
Yeah. Thanks for the answer. That was the right answer.
Yeah, I wish we could keep you longer because I'd love to talk about the lack of salvage logging on public lands and the impact it's having on the current fire down in the old Biscuit complex and the potential for the Douglas complex from the previous season. And what's kind of nice about Yellow Point, at least it's all private lands for the most part, and it's going to be salvage
About
logged.
50-50, 50% BLM.
Is BLM moving ahead with their salvage plan? Or
They're rather limited.
Which is what I thought, which is the big issue, was when you get a reburn and you have those snags.
They understand the importance and the value and would like to do it, but some of their processes are encumbering the local effort there. But
Yeah, so,
again, if you have questions, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email.
and I'll be seeing you
We'll try
tomorrow.
to keep you updated. Yes.
Yep.
Come back.
Thank
Yeah.
you again.
Tomorrow's their annual summer tour, which I will be participating with. So, thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to our next item, which is item 9C, which is Order 1506-1608, in the matter of approving the transfer of appropriations in the amount of $70,110 from contingency to materials and services within General Expense Special Revenue Fund 260, approving allocations. And I'm not going to go through each individual one. I'll let you walk us through that. And turn it over to you.
Great. Chair Bozovich, Commissioners, good morning. Thanks for hearing from us today. We've got a couple, well, 4 to be exact, funding requests to present to you today. I'm going to go through them and give a very high level overview of each of those and give you an update of where we are in terms of our operational contingency fund, and then invite those that are here to speak to the individual projects to give just a few minutes additional information, and then the opportunity for you to ask them questions about their project. So, as I mentioned, or as Commissioner Bozovich mentioned, the total funding request is in the $70,000 range. We did have 4 requests. The first request was actually from Fertilab, and they did request $81,900. After staff reviewed that request and some additional information, we are actually recommending a funding of $34,110. And that would go toward a couple of, an education series, some business and community outreach activities, and a pitch stream event. There were a number of different reasons why we came back with the lower dollar figure for a recommendation. One that really can't be ignored is that Fertilab, we already are very supportive of Fertilab, and I don't want to indicate that we aren't supportive of them by this lesser recommendation for funding. We believe that the work that they're doing in this community is exceptional and very much needed. But what I would point out is that not long ago, the commissioners approved an allocation of $75,000 to go to the Lane Workforce Partnership for their Regional Innovation and Training Fund. And Fertilab has received funding from that program. And so we are already supporting them through that, through those efforts, and they are very appreciative. So last year we funded the Fertilab through the training program at $44,000. And I might be letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but I think it's important to note that last week the committee met for the Regional Training Fund. We had some additional dollars to allocate, and Fertilab has preliminarily received another $50,000 from that fund. So a total of $94,000 in training money coming from that fund, coupled with the $34,000 that we're recommending here today, I think is is a really great showing of our support for that program and the opportunities that it's providing to our community. The next funding request is for the Cottage Grove CDC. They're requesting $13,000 toward a microgrid feasibility study for the Cottage Grove area. And I would note, representatives are here today to speak with you a little bit more about that. I would note that the recommendation coming from staff is that the delivery of that money is contingent on the Cottage Grove Community Development Corporation raising additional funds that are needed to fully fund the microgrid study. So I'll leave it at that, and like I said, those representatives here can talk to you a little bit more about what that study means. The third request is from the City of Oak Ridge. I think all of you are aware, and certainly Commissioner Stewart has been involved in some of these discussions, that your county staff has been working a lot with the City of Oak Ridge. They've got a number of things going on up there in terms of community and economic development. We're very pleased about that. One of the things is that recently, within the last 6 or 8 months, a new business has been looking to locate in Oak Ridge. And they've found a building, and it happens to be in the Oak Ridge Industrial Park, but the nature of the business is such that there needed to be some building upgrades in the facility that they've chosen. So the City of Oak Ridge has come to us and asked us for some gap funding to help install a sprinkler system that would accommodate that new business and create a number of new local jobs for that community. Finally, the City of Eugene is requesting $5,000 to assist with a waste management resource recovery study that's to be conducted by the Good Company. This study will help support Lane County's current efforts of developing a regional solid waste master plan by providing important analysis on 2 key waste streams, both plastics and organics. Again, we have some representatives here that are much more well-versed in those topics than I am, and they can come and speak to you a little bit more about that. Before we start having folks come up, I would just note that, give you an update on where we are in terms of the contingency fund. The estimated budgeted contingency funds available for these incentive awards in this fiscal year 14-15 are estimated at $118,000. Should the board recommend approval for the request as submitted by staff, that would leave about $47,000, just shy of $48,000 remaining in that fund. Should the board approve the full amounts requested, so that would mean you would approve the $81,900 requested from Fertilab, that would leave $100 left in that fund. So with that, do you have any questions for me before I start inviting folks up?
I have one question, and this is mostly for the audience benefits. Can you describe Fund 260 and where it gets its resources from?
Absolutely. So the funding that we're talking about is video lottery resources. Those are resources that Lane County receives from the state of Oregon through the video lottery tax. And they are specifically earmarked for the funds that we receive through economic development. They are specifically earmarked for economic development projects and cannot be used for anything that is deemed by statute not economic development.
Thank you. I just wanted people to understand that we don't have some pocket of money hidden away somewhere that we start giving out to various people just upon request. That there's some contingency fund we're sitting on that does that. This is video lottery money dedicated for a specific purpose that we reserve to utilize for these kind of grants. So
sure.
I just want to make sure the public understood that, because we have a tendency to talk in acronyms in government and all that, and the public sometimes doesn't follow what we're talking about, and they hear us giving out money to, you know, this business or this agency for these purposes, and then we have to ask them for money to fund something as critical as road maintenance, and they don't understand that the monies aren't the same pot of money, and some of them are dedicated to specific purposes in the creation of that, even through our state constitution, which the video lottery, you know, is tied to. So I just want to make sure folks out there understand what money we're talking about here.
Sure,
and this
absolutely.
is video lottery money.
Absolutely.
So, any other questions?
Okay, then I would invite Sheila from Fertilab to come up and speak to that project first.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today, and thank you for your support of Fertilab. So for the sake of explaining what Fertilab is, so Fertilab is the hub of early stage entrepreneurship in Lane County. We are an innovation incubator. And so what that means is that we provide inspiration and opportunities for early stage entrepreneurs to try, and also to lower the risk of taking that step for early stage entrepreneurs. We are part of the Innovation Network, which is something that RAIN has a great interest in. So RAIN is the Regional Accelerator and Innovation Network, and we are part of that network, and we partner with RAIN. So we are very excited about expanding our programs into Springfield. We've been headquartered in Eugene for 2 years, and we've had some very great success with developing entrepreneurs in Eugene. We 2/3 of the classes of the RAIN Accelerator have come through Fertilab first. So we train them and prepare them so that they are ready for the rigors of the Accelerator program. And so the reasons why we're really interested in expanding into Springfield is because our whole mission is about creating and supporting the Innovation Network. And we really feel like there's some untapped potential in Springfield, and we'd really like to bubble up those entrepreneurs that are hidden away in the cracks. And so what we found in Eugene over the last 2 years, we've watched as all of these entrepreneurs who are working in their homes and their garages and weren't really known to anybody have come out of the cracks and started to interact with each other and build startups. And now we're starting to see this innovation startup community growing. And we would like to tap into Springfield because we believe that there are a lot of potential entrepreneurs there. We also are excited because the city of Springfield has quite a strong philosophy that is very entrepreneurial. They're very much about a get things done kind of philosophy. And so we feel that that fits really nicely with what our mission is to get entrepreneurs up and going. So why would these lottery dollars have an impact, or what would the impact be? So there's sort of the short-term and the long-term impact. The immediate impact is that we see more companies formed through this program, that we see more dollars coming into the local community. In 2 years in Eugene, we've had more than $3 million come into the community through grants and other sources of income, and we've seen these companies start to employ people. Long-term impact will be some portion of these companies will really set root here and start to grow, and these are all traded sector companies, so they tend to be high-growth traded sector companies that will intend to hire and employ 50 to 100 or more people. So we expect these to be pretty good-sized company with a number of employees. And so that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually a request that I've made on as well, and in fact, I was able to first really meet Sheila. It's been a few months ago now at a RAIN Advisory Committee meeting, and talking about, I think, the potential that Fertilab has, and she had mentioned to me her work with John Tamilonis at the city about securing a site, and I thought this was really a golden opportunity, and especially with the momentum that's really happening here with not only Eugene Tech, but I think Rain as a whole, and I think what Ferdy Lab does, I loved how you explained it. I mean, you're taking these minds, these entrepreneurial minds, and really training them. And there's a story I love telling, and it's about a high school classmate of mine by the name of Damon Sly. And Damon, of course, was, he and Jeff Tennell were the original brainchild of Dynamics, where they started it out as students at University of Oregon. And today, Damon's still an entrepreneur today in the whole computer gaming business. And I know that when I've talked to different folks that are associated with Rain and others, I mean, Damon and Jeff, obviously, they're rock stars. And because they've been doing this for so long, they started at such a time where it was really at the ground floor. And this is really what Shula's doing. I mean, this is really what she's doing. She is training folks at the ground floor. And our hope is these businesses will remain here. And in talking to Jim Coonan and Pat Jones, I think the great thing is these entrepreneurs here at the U of O or wherever they're coming from, borders doesn't matter. It's just a matter of making sure they have a facility just to work through the 10-9. So I really want to say thank you to Shula for her efforts in Ferdy Lab, because there's some successes already happening here. And with this whole the accelerator network, the innovation network that's happening, I mean, we have some great potential here locally to really see some things happen. And so I'm really excited. And so I strongly support this in particular, but we're looking at all of them. I think they're all great, and I'm looking forward to the other comments. But I really wanted to make a comment on behalf of Ferdy Lab and really say again thank you to Shula for the work she's involved in. I'm also very pleased with the workforce, the fact that we partnered with that grant. You're able to receive those additional funds here as well, that you can be successful. So really want to say thank you to Shula and her efforts, but this is something I've been involved in, and really want to say thank you to both Glenda Poling and Sarah for jumping on this as quick as they have, so we can be supportive here and continue to be supportive. So Shula, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I would just echo the things that Commissioner Lycan already has said. It's a great opportunity, and spreading our minute amount of wealth around throughout the community and attracting more money in. I just have a question regarding the motion. We have order 1506, 1608, 1506, 1608, that the order in the agenda says Fertilab Springfield 24-110. Yeah. There's a typo. You said that already, and I missed it.
No. I meant to say that. My apologies. In the board order in my packet, it's 34,000. I think the agenda title just had a typo in it, so it's 34,000.
So for anyone following at home, the agenda states 24-110, but it should state 34-110. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Full support, by the way. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to thank you for applying for this, and secondly, I'm glad that we're approving it. I think that it's really important to put the focus on innovation and see if the lottery dollars that are intended for the purpose of economic development can really get that jump start. And I think it's great that you're focusing on this particular type of innovator, entrepreneur, because I do agree with you that this is where a lot of the job growth comes from. So to me, it's a much better example than trying to get some big company that's already big somewhere else to come here. And I appreciate the policy directive that leads to this, but also the local energy that applies for it and makes it work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for the juxtaposition of coming here to talk us about innovation with old school index cards.
Well, I was asked not to bring a slide deck.
But we saw from our previous presentation how dangerous bringing a thumb drive can be. So they had to start without slides. So
sometimes
bravo to you for the index cards. It reminded me of early in my career. So
Just briefly, I had a question regarding the activities not recommended, and services to startups of $43,000 was not recommended. And I had a sidebar with Commissioner Lycan, and he assured me that you're doing outreach that really is providing providing an offset that would give the money as services to startups. So if anybody, once again, is looking at the agenda item, we're not forsaking services to startups. In fact, you are with your outreach covering that.
Yes, yeah, we do a lot of outreach. I mean, a huge amount of what we do is to go out into the community and, like I said, to bubble up these entrepreneurs and even what I call wantrepreneurs. So people that may think that they want to be an entrepreneur but don't really know what that means. So we do a lot of outreach.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if there's no more questions, then we'll move on to the Cottage. Thank you, Sheila. We'll move on to Cottage Grove CDC, and we have representatives here, Matt Parsons and Lori Baumgartner. Come ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Matt Parsons. I'm the chair of the Cottage Grove Community Development Corporation. Thank you for your time and allowing us to present to you this morning. Cottage Grove Community Development Corporation was formed in 2011. It's a partnership between the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce, the City of Cottage Grove, and the EBID, and the at-large community. Our goal and mission is to advocate, foster community projects, collaborate, and educate the community, and to promote economic development within the Cottage Grove area. Part of our strategic plan and one of our projects we're working on is a feasibility study for a microgrid, working with Green Energy Corp. And the feasibility study we're very excited about the potential for what this can mean for Cottage Grove. And the
battery must have just died.
Better switch.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Lori Baumgartner. I am the owner of a business called Goddess of Grants, and I've been working with the Cottage Grove community quite widely for approximately 10 years and working on a strategic plan with Cottage Grove CDC over the last year. And what I really want to point to, I know that you have our proposal in front of you, and I want to just point out a couple of things about why I think it's important that you fund this at the level of $13,000. We are looking to raise funds for a $50,000 feasibility study. We have worked over the last year to do preliminary work on that and have developed 4 sites that we think are possibilities for a feasibility study and for a future project. We have done the work. We are now at a point where we really do need the $50,000 in order to continue. Once that is done, and we believe that one of those sites will be chosen and that information is gathered, the rest of the project is funded. And that project will develop jobs, create economic development. And as you probably know, Cottage Grove has seen a number of things. Some new businesses move in. Bohemia Park has developed some tourism. I've worked on those projects. But I think this project has a particular synergy and innovation to it that we want to be the first in Oregon to work with Green Energy Corporation on this and bring that resiliency, that job creation. And I'm going to give you a little tiny bit of background. I was a grants development manager at Lane Community College for 15 years. I worked with a National Science Foundation project in North Carolina on the Freedom Center. At that time, I didn't know Green Energy Corporation. They were there, and they brought in innovation that I wish that Lane Community College would have here. And now I believe we have that opportunity to do that right here in Cottage Grove, in a rural community that really needs that boost. The one other thing I want to address before you ask questions is that I heard Sarah say that this is contingent on raising other funds. I want to just challenge a little bit. We have a donor that will match one-on-one. We're looking to raise $25,000. I have a couple of family foundations that are also willing to come in and help fund this. Everybody's looking for a first funder. I would be really proud if Lane County would be that first funder, or at least say that they would contingent on the other, because as you know, once one funder's in, everybody wants to be in, but nobody wants to be that first. If you say yes to the $13,000, I believe the $50,000 is there. I also want to note that David Tam, the president of Asian and U.S. Northwest Regions for Green Energy Corporation, is sitting behind us, should you have any questions, technical questions of him. And I just want to open it up to questions.
Mr. Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, David Tam is a very good friend of mine, and I've actually learned quite a bit about the microgrid and the potential that it has. And this is actually pretty exciting to see that Cottage Grove wants to be involved in this and participate. And I think just recently, well, and of course you talked about Green Energy Corporation North Carolina. And of course, they moved their corporate facility here, and which is exciting as well. And so, I believe that's the Dana Siebert is the latest addition to Green Energy Corp too. So you have a lot of great minds here locally that are involved. But David, and I've been able to sit down with David, and Starbucks seemed to be one of our favorite places. And his computer out, and he showed me how the microgrid works. And the potential this has, I think, in the future as far as energy is concerned. And so I think this is really a great opportunity, not only for Cottage Grove, but I think maybe for Cottage Grove to kind of showcase here in Lane County, you're one of our larger cities, but in the large context, you're a smaller community. But I think this is really a great opportunity to kind of see how this will work and how this will incorporate into your community as you move forward. So I'm very supportive of this, and I look forward to really seeing, as you move forward, to see some results. And hopefully, as the board passes this and agrees, I would look forward to having you come back and kind of report and on how things are progressing, because I think, like I stated, I think there's a lot of potential here for other communities, both small and large, into the future. So I really look forward to it. But I saw David walk in, and I realized microgrid. Oh, that's why he's here today. So anyway, this is great, and I really strongly support this. So nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I'm also very pleased to hear about this and the collaboration in terms of Lane County and economic development and the dollars that might go into this, but also the local collaboration between the city and the Chamber of Commerce and the business part of it. And I guess not specifically being from Cottage Grove, but interested in what's going on there. I'm very excited to hear more about what Green Energy Corporation might be able to do for in bringing expertise and technology to the idea of mixing various types of energy, particularly lower cost and renewable energy, and what the benefit that could have to the economy of the area, but also maybe some energy polluting energy reduction. I guess I'll call it polluting energy reduction. That would be beneficial to everyone. And I don't know if you were here when I talked about the Mauna Loa measurements in Hawaii, and what has that got to do with anything? Well, it's some of the cleanest air in the whole world, and so NOAA has the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has a monitoring site there, and it's talked about the number of times it's gone over 400 carbon parts per million into the atmosphere, or measuring it. And this may be a very tiny amount, and I doubt even if we blew really hard the clean air that might reach Hawaii, I doubt if Cottage Grove's entire, psychic energy is really going to change that number appreciably. But I think that if everyone did that, and I think if everyone applied that kind of technology, we might have a better chance of making a dent in it. Anyway, I personally think that we ought to be thinking too, and I know Mr. Mokryski left for other important things, but Mr. Tam and Mr. Mokryski and I have met to discuss whether or not we could actually think about, and this is off the topic here, whether we could actually benefit here in our microgrid of the jail, the Charlton building, the Lane County Courthouse, the big parking garage we own across the street, whether we could put together an economic development program for ourselves, thinking about the geothermal, wind, and other resources that are here, and how we could blend that with the more conventional resources. I know that's off the topic of Cottage Grove, but it's definitely on the topic for Ms. Case in economic development and the idea of the government leading rather than following. And thank you very much.
So I have a very basic question. Nowhere in the documentation does it describe what a microgrid is, and what we're funding a feasibility study for. It just keeps saying study for a microgrid, but it does not say what it is or what we're doing here.
Yes.
It's just one copy point, but
Yeah, we can get a copy of that. We can get a copy of that to you, and actually I did links. I was told to keep it very, very brief, and maybe I just kept it too brief. But I have some handouts here and also have some links. But if you'd like, David Tam could come and give you a quick, brief overview on the record for that.
If it can be brief, that'd be great.
I'll move aside.
The engineer for former electric utility is curious. So.
Good day, Commissioners. I'm David Tam, and I'm here to give you a brief overview of a microgrid, Commissioner Bozovich. A microgrid is essentially a portfolio of renewable energy resources based on geographical resources as well as geographical footprint of a facility. It can consist of solar power, geothermal, battery storage, CHP units, fuel cells, whatever resources are available of the site. So for example, microgrid in Lane County would be different than the coast because of a wind resource is stronger there than it is here. And essentially what we do as a platform is we engineer design, we construct, finance, and then we operate and maintain a microgrid to provide 85% of power needed on-site, generated on-site, so you do not have to use utility lines. So I think that's kind of a brief overview. Our software platform, the way I use it as an analogy, is that we are a conductor of an orchestra, where the various renewable resources are our instruments, and as a conductor, we unify into one smooth running operation.
Okay, great. Because, for me, microgrid says you're going to set up an electric grid for a small area, which is different than what you just described, which is you're setting up basically a bunch of generation resources and coordinating by a single geographic area in a small area. Which lends to a secondary question for me is, it sounds like this is going to require some kind of purchase agreement from the utilities in order to have it run smoothly, because most of what you just described in your portfolio is not spinnable resource. It's only available whenever that resource is, when the wind blows, when the sun shines, that sort of thing. So you have to cover the down periods for that resource, and you don't have peaking ability in those. So it almost means you have to sell back to the grid somehow or another, and then buy from the grid. So is that all part of this, what I consider the grid? So
that's a great question, Commissioner. It actually is that we are on the client side. We provide 85% of power for a site's usage. We do not require to sell to utility or integrate with utility. We do, though, we integrate to utility at 15% difference of power for redundancy purposes. So in the worst case scenario, if a microgrid were to fail, we would actually use the utility as our backup. So worst case scenario, you buy power from the utility. Using battery storage, with the amount of power in the sun that we have or whatever resources we have, we're actually able to be essentially islandable and off-grid if you needed to be in a worst-case scenario.
So talking about backing up, it would be more battery storage versus where the Achilles heel has been for many years. But due to, as you can see in the news, Tesla has come out with more and more batteries, battery cost is coming down, as well as other renewable resources. So it is essentially its own living entity. It could be a complex of buildings, it could be a campus, it could be a hospital, it could be a series of blocks, it could be an eco-district, an eco-village if necessary as well. I'm more than happy to sit down with you and go over more details with you in more depth at another time if you'd like.
Yeah, we can do that at another time, but I appreciate the description. So better understand what we're funding a feasibility study for.
Understandable.
For the record, he had explained that to me about 3 or 4 times. You got it done first.
Us as well.
Any other questions on this grant? Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'd have Louis Gomez come up from the city of Oak Ridge. And I'll make sure to get copies of these to each of you.
Do we still call you chief, or?
Louis, fine. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here this morning. So, as Sarah stated, we're looking for funding for a sprinkler system. We have been in negotiations and recruitment with this company since about November, and we are in the final stages. They just completed an environmental assessment. A couple minor issues came up. We're working through those with them, and we're headed hopefully towards final legal review here in the next 3 weeks to a month. So one of the key issues is a fire suppression system for the building is something that's going to really be needed, and that is where we are lacking in our industrial park is our fire suppression capabilities. And we just recently put into service a 100,000-gallon tank that we have on the industrial park property, so for some additional fire suppression at this time. And the council is currently going through the community outreach process to build a 1 million-gallon water tank and to put in a new well, and we believe that that will assist us with the industrial park in the eastern part of the city once we get there. However, that's about 14 to 18 months out by the time we complete that project. So it is really imperative that we have some fire suppression capabilities till we can get there. And as Sarah said, Lane County has been working with us quite a bit these past couple of years. We've done a lot, and we also appreciate the funding that the commissioners gave us for fiber, which assisted 4 of our businesses in Oak Ridge. So all of those pieces are coming together. We're starting to see some positive movement. It's been 30 years that the city's been working at trying to get somebody in there, and we believe that we're at the cusp of doing that now. So any funding that the commissioner will assist us with is greatly appreciated.
Any questions?
Mr. Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know Commissioner Stewart's very excited about this, and we talked briefly about this project. And so, first of all, Louis, I just want to say it's great to see you in the position up there. You've really stabilized the community, and really appreciate your hard work as in your role there in Oak Ridge. And I think this project as a whole, this is another easy one to support, in my view. The amount that we're looking to expend here could really be huge benefits for your community as a whole. So, small investment for a real potential great future. So, good work. And I really want to say thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and I will pass that on to the council also.
Commissioner Farr.
Chief Louis. I wish Commissioner Stewart were here to say some of the things that I've heard him say about the activity that we're beginning to see in Oak Ridge. And it's pretty exciting. Oak Ridge is a jewel It really is, and it's just waiting. It's just poised for a great deal of activity. It's a wonderful place to be, wonderful place to visit. I drive through there regularly on my way to the lakes in eastern Oregon, and as we continue to make Oak Ridge more attractable and specifically more accessible, we have a highway rolling through there. We also have a rail line rolling through there, and as you know, we're working on getting a rail stop at some point, maybe in the future at Oak Ridge. Would be an incredible addition to your quiver, shall we say, of reasons to go to Oak Ridge and ways to get to Oak Ridge. Congratulations on everything you've done since taking over as city manager. I love your city. I love what's going on there, and I wish, once again, Commissioner Stewart were here to say some of the things that he says to me that I would just stumble over the eloquence that he provides when he talks about what's happening in Oak Ridge. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez, and I almost try to call you chief, but I suppose you've moved on in your life, and that's good. I think that you have matriculated into this position. How long have you been now the city manager?
Well, I started as interim 3 years ago in June, so been sitting here 3 years now.
Well, you've really been part of, evening out the ups and downs of democracy, and I really appreciate you hanging in there and doing a good job. I also wanted to mention, in conjunction with this grant and the mention of the rail stop, the work that you guys are doing up there in promoting the bicycle economy and the mountain biking and that sort of thing. What the train stop idea seems like it might build, on that. And I'm wondering, well, what is the actual status of that from your point of view? What is, are we like trying to push a train up a hill without an engine here and probably won't achieve much? Or are we, because I personally have been, Commissioner Stewart and we've been in on this for a long, long time, probably 10 years. And I would just like to know, well, are we going to get this, and who really makes this decision? Who's running this railroad anyway?
Well, and that's a good question. As Commissioner Sorensen said, we have been working on this project off and on at least 10 years. And recently, I'd say about 6 months ago, we had discussions with Congressman DeFazio's aide, and gave him information on what we've been doing with Union Pacific. So, who's running the railroad is Union Pacific, is who's dictating on what we have to do or not do. And what they are saying at this time is that we would have to put in a sidetrack to the tune of $3 to $6 million. Okay, and the argument that we've been presenting is that we believe a whistle stop, a 2-minute, 3-minute stop could work in Oak Ridge. However, we did in fact sit down with Vice President of Operations with Union Pacific, so we've gone up and down the chain, and he's very adamant about the sidetrack, as I said, to the tune of $3 to $5 million. So we're still looking at it. The level of energy is not as high as it was, because we're still trying to figure out how we're going to get around the Union Pacific piece or try to collaborate with them some kind of way, but we're not getting a lot of movement. However, we have been working with LTD on trying to get additional buses on the weekends, and so they recently put in a grant, and part of the grant is to add at least 1 or 2 trips on Saturday and possibly 1 or 2 trips on Sunday, and to also connect with Amtrak. And so part of that piece is the Amtrak piece is important, and especially if we do have some bus traffic, public transportation on the weekends is one of the things that we're lacking. So that's a balance that the council is looking at right now, is with the LTD piece, but still trying to work on the Amtrak piece also.
Thank you.
Mr. Lykin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Who did you speak to again at Union Pacific? Do you remember the name? And they were from operations, is that correct?
Yeah, they were down from in California, so yes, so it was, I don't remember his name right now, Commissioner, but I can email him.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because it's my understanding, I don't know this yet for a fact, but it's my understanding that with Brock Nelson retiring as the regional government affairs for Union Pacific, I was told Carmen Four is maybe moving in that position. And if that's the case, that could be a terrific link to us. I also know there's the two lobbyists that that represent Union Pacific. I know very well. So if you could forward me that name, I would appreciate it. And let's see if we can maybe talk to some other folks who are a little bit more on the government affairs end, because they're going to probably have a better ability to massage this. So if you could, I would really appreciate that. I think because I agree. I mean, Commissioner Sorensen said it perfectly. We've been working on this for a long time, and it's to me, it's just not a great opportunity for Oak Ridge. It's a great opportunity for our state. I mean, they would get to see places that really they haven't before, and having that stop there would just be outstanding. And so if you could forward me the name of that person, I would appreciate it. And let's see if we can maybe just our relationships with different folks who do more on the government affairs side of it, maybe we can work through them as well.
That would be great.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I'm glad we sparked that discussion.
Yeah, me too.
So, getting back to the subject at hand.
It's peaceful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We could start talking about PM25 or something like that, but...
Oh, let's not go there.
Yeah. Which I'm hoping this new tenant's not going to generate additional PM25 in the wintertime. So
No, that should not be an issue.
Good. There, I brought it around to the subject.
There you go.
I will say that I'm kind of happy to see us investing in a sprinkler system, even though your long-term plans are to have an adequate water system for that industrial firefighting. You talk to, having been in a water utility, and you talk to any of the fire marshals around and the fire chiefs, they much prefer on-site sprinkler suppression systems that are automatic to having adequate flow at a hydrant, and reserves in the system, because 90% of the fires can be stopped with the sprinkler suppression system before they get to the point where you have to hook up to a hydrant and fight them. And that's where, if you look at the mill fire in Springfield, one of the failures in that fire was the on-site system failed. And I think it's, great. We're going to be ahead of your system, but this on-site system we're helping pay for will actually stay in place. It's not like it's going to go away.
That's correct.
So that additional fire protection for the tenants, for the community, I think it's worth investing in. And it's actually one of the best ways of providing fire protection, in the long run, is that on-site automated system that catches that fire before it gets to the point you need to hook once you're hooking up to a hydrant, you're really talking about protecting other structures, not protecting what was in that structure. So I really appreciate that part of this grant, that we're working on that initial attack with that sprinkler system. So
thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? Okay, so
Okay.
you're on to City of Eugene, I guess, huh?
Last one. Thank you, Larry. We'll have Ethan and Dan come up, talk about the waste management resource recovery study.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ethan Nelson from the City of Eugene. I'm the Waste Prevention Manager within the Planning and Development Department. So a little bit of background on this project is that it's was initiated by Councilor Zelenka around a year ago, looking at the recycling materials and waste discards that already come out into the community, either in Eugene or kind of in the region, and seeing if there was an increased economic opportunity to manage those materials a little bit more appropriately. And so we pieced together a feasibility study to look at what those material flows are, what are economic development opportunities, and what are some of the capital investments that would be needed to be made to really actualize, to bring to bear the economic opportunities around those materials. And so we put together a scope of work and started having discussions. We've been in discussions with Lane County Waste Management Division as part of the larger solid waste master plan process that the county and the cities are currently working on, and saw that being able to infuse economic development information on into the larger master plan would be beneficial in the long run, but also in the short term in regards to what we're all working on around economic development activities and trying to maximize those across a wide variety of programs that cities and counties run. So we contracted with The Good Company, which is a local consulting team here in Eugene. It's got experience in recycling and compost feasibility and market analysis studies, and also kind of the environmental benefits, looking at a triple bottom line assessment of where these materials are going to be going and how they're going to perform in regards to Commissioner's comments earlier about Mauna Loa. So they're in the midst of it, and I just received another email in regards to they're wrapping up a lot of their analysis, and now they're working with local companies such as Bulk Handling Systems to provide some flow-through material and be able to source and identify the sizing of material recovery facility technology that would need to be put into place for us to capture the stream. And just as an aside, we did a study probably about 4 years ago, with University of Oregon honors students in economics, and they looked at our waste system from the economic benefit standpoint to see where we were, and this was a regional look in regards to our metropolitan area, where we were in kind of comparison with other municipalities around jobs associated with solid waste, recycling, reuse. And we were really high on the reuse. We were standard around solid waste, but we were very, very low on processing. And it's kind of funny that we would have the global leader in processing technology located here in our home community, and yet we don't have jobs associated with the actual processing of materials here. So that was really what we set out to look at. And we looked at basically organics and plastics because there's existing markets and or very strong infrastructural challenges around looking at other materials, be that construction demolition debris or carpet, whereas plastics and organics, they already have kind of nascent markets or strong markets, and we were looking at what we could do to leverage the existing activities in there. And so we're looking to wrap this project up in about a month's time, and a couple of the deliverables which are in your packet include a final analysis report comprised of research completed and reported on in accordance with the project outline, recommendations of how best to advance the identified opportunities and public sector options for capital investments and public policy actions, provided in digital form, including an executive summary, and then also make a presentation that would be suitable for county commissioners to, and I can pass it on to Sarah once the project's wrapped up. So that's it. Questions?
Any questions? So I have one real quick. Will the feasibility study also look at the legal implications of our contract with EPUD relative to Short Mountain and not reducing the methane production capabilities of that? If we're going to, particularly you mentioned organics and diverting those out of the waste stream. Our contract with the EPUD talks about our not doing stuff to reduce that methane production. So is that going to be part of the study?
No.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Hurley, Manager of the Waste Management Division here at Lane County. And this feasibility, as Ethan said, no, this study will not address that. But I am having a conversation with our legal counsel on Thursday on that very issue. So we'll hope to engage with the board on that subject in the near future.
Unfortunately, it was a contract set up without an out clause. So we are stuck. So maybe great if it looks like we might be able to get economic activity out of diverting organics, but we may not be legally able to. So just FYI. Any other questions? So with that finishes the individual. So in general on the
Yeah, so
order.
any additional questions for me?
Yeah, any questions in general on the grants and the order? Commissioner Lykin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions for Sarah. Good presentation by all, by the way. I'd like to move approval on order 15-06-16-08 in the matter of approving that the transfer of appropriations in an amount of $70,110 from contingency to materials and services within general expense special revenue fund 260, approving allocations as follows. Ferdy Lab Springfield, $34,110. Cottage Grove CDC, $13,000. City of Oak Ridge, $18,000. City of Eugene, is that $15,000 or $5,000?
$5,000.
Yep, $5,000. Yep, there it is.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Farr.
Just, Mauna Loa had been mentioned a couple of times. I just took a minute to look at the plume of carbon dioxide, and as it has kind of stabilized evidently in the last year. But it's you see it pluming over the Pacific Ocean out of China, and it swirls around the northern hemisphere, and it really emanates from China. So it's a pretty graphic illustration and Mauna Loa is right in the downstream of China, not particularly in the downstream of the west coast of the United States.
There's been much discussion in the scientific community of whether that's the correct place to be using for overall, but that
seems to be directly downstream. Thank you.
Interesting, thank you. Any other discussion to the actual motion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Stewart excused. And I wish, Louis, you're here.
I will deliver the good news to
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. Because unfortunately, Commissioner Stewart's attending a Forest Trust Council meeting today on behalf of the county. So he's doing county business, and they schedule these things, and it's entire state organization. They can't work around a single county. So he would be here cheering you on, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Commissioners.
He'd also be here cheering on Cottage Grove, too. So with that, we'll move on to Commissioner's business. Any announcements? Commissioner Lykin.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So on Sunday, I was able to participate in a community event, and a lot of thank yous, in particular to the Eugene Rotary, downtown Rotary, as well as many other folks involved, and to our staff. John Ahrens, in particular, receives a lot of credit, and big thank yous to him and all of our youth services staff, and of course, that's under the jurisdiction of our Alicia Hayes as Director of Health and Human Services. But we were able to do on Flag Day appropriately, raise a new flag, the United States flag and the state flag, new flagpole. A lot of folks were involved in this, not only the Rotary, but our old pal Gary Wildish did all the engineering of it. Materials were donated, the pole was donated, and of course you had the veteran of foreign wars were part of the event as well. They actually raised the flag, and it was just a neat opportunity. So we have a flag there officially in front of the youth services, and I really want to say thank you to all involved. From the Eugene Rotary, in particular, Irene and Kevin Altucker, they were really the strong support, but the club as a whole strongly supported it. So had a great time, and really want to thank all the folks involved for being part of that and all the donations, and thank you to the county to making it happen, and in particular And then finally, just to kind of feed on what Stephen had talked about earlier with the South Willamette Economic Development Corporation, things are progressing well. We have added a couple new board members. Jeff Elliott from Johnson Crushers. We were going to find out from Richard Boyles. He was interested. Don't know for sure if he's coming on board. We had some renewals. Steve Korth, Eric Jensen. I don't have it in front of me, so I'll have to think about it now. But we're a couple of the private. Oh, Craig Wanachek they were the private sector folks who were going to be continued. And another new addition is Sabrina Parsons, who was, as we know, she heads up the Palo Alto software here locally and is really involved in the technology business, not only here locally, but throughout the state, and is a real leader in that. So those are the new board members. And as Steve mentioned, hopefully we'll be going through final interview process in August for a new director of the agency. But what's great is that all the jurisdictions are really coming together. There's a lot of momentum, and realizing how important it's going to be, that it will be to have that kind of one-stop, if you will, one-stop shopping, for lack of a better word, but one-stop where businesses here locally, or if they're from the outside that want to come in, that's the first initial stop they would make. And when it comes to the economic development, not just here in the metro area, but for all of Lane County. So a lot of progress being made, and very, very enthusiastic about where we are today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Just 2 points that Mr. Mokrahajski mentioned earlier. Tonight we're having a meeting regarding the ongoing discussions surrounding human rights activities in Lane County, and I think it's the third of a series of meetings, and we'll have great participation. Thank you for arranging that. Thank you for your proactive moving forward on the request that we made a little over a year ago. And so nothing really to report at this point in time. It's just data gathering regarding what historically has happened and what is currently happening both in the city of Eugene and around us. So it's very good progress, but nothing to report at this point in time. Second is that we had a second of a series of meetings on the farmers market, the potential of a downtown Lane County farmers market yesterday, and we have another meeting coming up next week. We saw case studies from around the nation of potential models that we could look at for farmers markets. And this week we're going to be looking, I believe, at Olympia Farmers Market, which is a town a little close to our size than some of the ones we've looked at in the last week or so. And then kind of excited about the discussion that's going forward. We have members of the farming community, members of the restaurant community, members of the building community. It really is a good and robust discussion that's taking place. And as you mentioned earlier, there are conditions that exist that we have to meet, and there are issues and situations that are being discussed at this point in time as we move forward to, at some point in the not too distant future, potentially having a year-round Lane County farmers market within a short golf shot of where we're sitting right now. So thank you very much for that work, Mr. Mokrahajski. Thank you.
Any other announcements? So I just like to mention that that I am going to be attending the Western Lane Fire Protection Association summer tour tomorrow, and I'm going to get to go out and look at the actual Yellow Point fire site with them. So I'll let you guys know if anything new and significant comes from that. And also, our staff would like to know from us, and you don't have to answer today, who is going to be attending the NACO conference this summer. Just so they can kind of coordinate with us, particularly Alex Kyler, our intergovernmental affairs person. So if you're considering going and you know that you're going, if you could let Alex know or let Mr. Mokrahajski know, they'd appreciate it. And let's see what next we have agenda team request. Are there any requests for future agenda items or work session requests from the board? Seeing and hearing none, then we'll move on to review of assignments.
I just heard two, Mr. Chair. from Commissioner Lycan, a request to monitor the public records bill, and we will do that. I'll talk to Mr. Kyler and Ms. Chinsky to make sure that we're following that bill and reviewing the implications, potential implications of that. And the other was a request to have a conversation with the City of Eugene about potentially their plans to move from a municipal airport to a regional airport. So both of those things I'll follow up with.
Any other assignments that were missed? Thank you. So with that, I'm going to recess the Lane County Board of Commissioners, and we'll reconvene in regular session in the Board of Commissioners conference room at 1:30, and then I will read us into executive session then. So we are recessed.